lots of drives which are taking place. Even sanctions across the world, regionally and internationally, who are trying to get supplies as quickly as possible into St. Vincent. Local companies are also providing assistance to central government in ensuring that the shelter have basics, food, water, in instances, clothes for persons who've had to just pull things and run quickly to the shelter. Tomorrow, God's willing, there will be vessels arriving from Venezuela. Yesterday, one arrived from Barbados. The Barbados Coast Guard came and brought some essential supplies, water, food, cots, things like that, especially for persons who've had to move to the evacuation centers because their homes would have been impacted by this stir.
Well, listen, do stay safe, look after yourself, and are you on air constantly then, Dion? Is it sort of 24-hour operation?
Yes, we're actually doing a 24-hour operation, and I went on this evening from 11, so I just took a quick break to speak with a few. So when I'm finished with you, then you my discussion.
I'm not sure why that's going.
They're listening because they want to know what's happening.
And they're calling in as well. You're asking them for their opinions. What are they telling you?
People are having a hard time sleeping at
night.
Well,
they're telling us that they're excited that we're there with them, and it's making what they have to go through easier because they understand that we're also having the same challenges, but we're still able to come in to render that service and to be there for them. Persons would let us know if they have any interruption to any particular type of service. Let's say, for example, if there's no flow.
Right. My neighbor was acting weird.
So people said the water authority, they're technicians. And so they will hear that in any sense effect change at the water supply to ensure that water is restored in these communities.
The sound of the nation, NBC, the National Broadcasting Corporation in St. Vincent. That was Dion John. Many thanks to her for taking a break on a busy schedule of keeping contentions informed about the progress of the eruption of the ash cloud and the electricity outages on the Caribbean.
I was happy for smoking a joint when I tuned in. I was tuned out when I tuned in.
Distribution of BBC World Service in the U.S. is supported by Drexel University. Drexel University's academic...
No, it's not supported by nothing. You're just restreaming their stream, which for some reason doesn't work anymore. They said they need water. You know what I find everywhere? Plastic bottles of water. I see people buying water like they're holding it like it's a prize, like they're just hoping that'll be the one that has the elixir of life molecule in it. It's in there. 1 in a billion bottles of water has the "you live forever" molecule. You just have to catch that one. They don't tell people that because it's viral marketing. Oh, I got bit by a damn bed bug. Big motherfucker, too. He should have known better. I flushed him down the fucking drain. He'll be out in the lake being eaten by a three-eyed salmon or something. Oh. Damn it. I want to see the results of the whole bottom of Lake Ontario being scanned, because I don't believe there's no U-boats in there. There's got to be. I've seen a Canadian Forces submarine in Toronto Harbor. Why couldn't a U-boat do the same thing? It's basically the same fucking thing. Because a crazy Dutch person thought that up. There's more locomotives on that train. I think. Computer, self-diagnostics, computer, report. It's the internet, really. It's not the internet, it's other. I better not bitch, I'll cut that off.
Don't forget to tell that
it's gonna fuck with my vibe, but I don't care like that it's going by. Like, oh, they gotta do something. I don't care about that. It's just gonna interfere. It sounds like it's revving high and moving slow. The whole fucking building shakes when they come by.
Make sure I'm seeing you. In a round plant, put the glass bomb a class here. Say I am the gun that makes the media internet. Yeah, you're small like a rose and it's a big like a beer. But never drink that, make us so much drink. Yeah, make it last year, but me better this year. I
What if that's not a train, but it's like lava flowing?
Me used to stand up on the side, man, from the corner. Me used to preach with me brethren from the Nova. And the plums, them I hang up in a different area. Them not know that it's always an entertainer. Used to drink up my liquor mixed with water. You say, shut up your mouth, I hear me, mother. She used to ball out and me say, ball out, Allah. You never know that I'm coming to the weekend and me back. Get my back, them I hit again, I give me even down. It's the place I'm in, but them I call it Canada. Take it from never to find the sea and down. It's that I'm a damn structure. They take a lip of tip of me, said out Jamaica. Now people never get that in a them a wonder. If I miss a black man, but I miss a white man. Nice enough, your dance and nice in the area. I did Who's the champion? Slow kitty people, slow kitty people, slow kitty people. Who's the champion? Slow kitty people, slow kitty people, slow kitty people. Who's the champion? Slow kitty people, slow kitty people, slow kitty people. Who's the champion? Knocking on the knees, and when I use the anger around, I use the watch underneath. They're gonna mash up the sound, like always the key, and another one's catch up. Pull up, ease up, oh Lord have mercy, oh Lord have mercy. Oh Lord have mercy, oh Lord have mercy. Hey, I'm stepping into another business, watch out.
Let's reprogram the autoplay thing here.
Oh, right, I forgot Bob the Builder functioning device somewhere.
It wasn't supposed to be a gap. They don't like to play.
You tell us something about yourself.
Why would you want to just start? Why would you want to just start playing?
Oh no, please. Let's hear about your child.
Crack dealer, rolling in a cut jackal. Mr. Bound Gang, control trafficking. They say my destiny is hell, and then I have a shit for every one of my crack sales. I say fuck it, tell the devil to prepare me a cell. I keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, but it's all I need. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, lost already speak. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Lose sleep or breathe, but it's all I need. Keep my head in the streets, keep my head in the streets. Don't sleep or breathe while already fading. I'm on this road, and I don't know where I'm heading. Gonna be these a dead till I stroll. Last entry of a lost soul. I gave God a cold shoulder. Now I'm on my own, a cold soldier. Let's see walk, who we judge me not. I can rock and blaze weed. If I'm not supposed to maybe Lord, you should come and take me. Bring an end to this shit, chasing dreams. Till the end, I'll be shit chasing with my team. Making it by any means. Heaven seems so far. When you selling what they selling, their souls world. I'm worried about how the end turns out. Someone ride till the sun.
Oh, that sounded better. If my timing was better, this would have been a bit better in my mind. You can find all of these if you follow all the links. Eventually, they're down there somewhere. So it can either play automatically with the sound off, or you can play it manually with the sound on. These are the two.
The positive in me, I am positive you're not getting rid of me, at least not that easily. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell God to look away. Somebody wanna see, yeah. I just wake up and crush the day. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell the devil he can wait. I got people on my sorrow on the way. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell God to look away. This ain't what you wanna see, I just wake up and crush the day. Yeah, they say home is where the heart is, but back home I was living heartless. We all hard-headed, trying to prove whose head's the hardest. Thugging was an art, you could consider me an artiste. Most of my friends grew up not knowing who their father is. Nothing in their fridge, you can see they ribs. Yep, this is how we live. Coming from a place that had nothing left to give, nothing left to take. There's nothing on the plate, but I'm dreaming of a steak. Everything is stake. I gamble with my life, either 5 stars or behind bars. Lock the jaws, we holding on. Pump up fast and on, cause I feel pain too. What I've been doing, what you've been through, what I feel you, yeah, it's true. Everything outside your window waiting to kill you. You think you know, but you ain't got a clue. Hear me, young Sherlock. Ain't no such thing as a search shot. It's a cold block, and I just want what you got. It's real talk. Don't make a scene, just give it up. That's how it is. Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Yeah. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell the devil he can wait. I got people on my serve on the way. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell God to look away today. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell the devil he can wait and kill you. You think you know, but you ain't got a clue. Hear me, young Sherlock. Ain't no such thing as a search shot. It's a cold block, and I just want what you got. It's real talk. Don't make a scene, just give it up. That's how it is. Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Where the fuck I'm from? Yeah. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell the devil he can wait. I got people on my serve on the way. I just wake up and crush the day, in the rush to get paid, tell the devil.
It's so, Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter if I call attention to it or not. They're just bombarding this IP address. Just bombarding. Whether it's this device, and then that one, and then this one, and then that one. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, you're fucking amateurs. You seem to keep forgetting that. You're fucking amateurs to us. What are you going to do with the body?
Pipeline projects and so on.
And then we're going to stop it.
Stumbling around the dark, then your good luck continue. But look here in this case, the small vial on the right. That is purloined for me to order from the famous Black Museum in Scotland Yard. That's the vial once tested in the case of the fabulous murderer, Dr. Trippz. And there, beside it, that lock of hair, that is from the head of the second victim of the noted mass murderer, Neil Creed. And up there, look up there, the hanging news of the mantle. From that once the body of the notorious Western baboon, Sally Turner. How's chances for running this place for Halloween? Well, all right then, since you no longer seem interested in playing the part of a bungling burglar, I assume that I'm also free to discontinue my pose as a victim of your disguise, Mr. Johnny Dollar. Oh? Looks like the chips are down and I'm the fish. Yes, and there are a lot of other fish in your sea, Mr. Dollar. Poison eels, that's what you are, the lot of you. Parasites, gambling on debt, and then not paying when you lose. Listen, Mr. Yarbo, you're placing a big hunk of blame where it doesn't belong. You're confused about this. Confused, yes. When your wife's insurance premium was overdue, you were allowed a 30-day period of grace. And when that went by, the policy was canceled. Now, that's not the insurance fault. It was your fault. But it wasn't. I gave her the money. She spent it on herself. I didn't make it up. I told them so after she died. I told them, but they wouldn't listen. I'll show you. I'll show you. Yarbo looked like he was headed to show me the chopping end of an axe laying on top of a small table. I hit him just as he hit the table. At floor, I noticed what I was standing on. One of those big red roses in the carpet. It hadn't exploded yet, but that was one flower I wasn't standing around waiting to see bloom. It took a lot of nerve picking up a telephone in that room. But I finally got a good hold on my nerves and a fair hold on an imitation of Yarbo's voice. Took one deep breath and picked up the phone. Yes?
Hello, James. Martha, I'm at the office. I have good news. 2 more. Mr. and Mrs. Granville Morse, killed tonight on the Great Highway, 2 miles south of Seal Rock. 8:45 tonight. Ran to a post killed. Insured for a total of $80,000. I gotta go now. Goodbye, James.
Well, congratulations, Brother Yarbo. 2 more at 8:45 tonight. And who's your new alibi? Me. In just a moment, we return to the second act of Johnny Dollar. But first, did you ever think of "and" as a comedy word? Maybe not, but you'll get a full demonstration on CBS this Wednesday night. There'll be Groucho Marx and his guest on that hilarious quiz, You Bet Your Life. Or it's the guests who sometimes floor Groucho with their wisecracks. There'll be Bing Crosby in his regular Wednesday night CBS show, and his special guest, Bob Hope. There'll be George Burns and Gracie Allen and Bill Goodwin. And becomes more filled with comedy when you tell or learn that Plum and Abner will have their premiere as Wednesday night regulars on most of these same CBS stations. Yes, this fall you hear them all on C and B and S. Now with our star Charles Russell, we return to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Yarbo might have been lying unconscious on the floor, but in that setting, I was still afraid of him. I'd have looked the place over with a fine-tooth comb, only having none, I used my hand. I put the pat test to Yarbo's pocket for a gun. He was unloaded. Then turned my attention to the little black bag he'd been carrying when I saw him leave the house, and which he still had with him when he returned. I hoped it wasn't booby-trapped. Opened it and discovered that it was a trap, the type my kind of booby stepped into. Inside the bag was a small radio receiver tuned to something I looked for and found in the room. A small radio transmitter of the type formerly used in army tanks. Through this, Yarbo had heard me enter his little museum of murder and had returned to catch me in the act of prowling the premises. About then, I caught him in the act of coming through. Well, welcome home, Yarbo. Time to get up. I just had a long chat on the phone with Martha. She thought I was you.
You think you're very clever, don't you? Martha knows my voice. If she talked to you at all, she didn't tell you anything. Of that I am sure, so save your breath. There is no use your telling me she gave you any information.
Oh, no, you got me wrong, pal. I only told you Martha called to let you know I know there is a Martha. I figured it might make you nervous, and nervous men are easy to beat.
Other nervous men may be easy to beat, Dollar, but not James Yarbo. The police have tried, and they couldn't prove a thing against me. Now, may I have your permission to get up?
Yeah. Maybe the police haven't been able to get anything on you, but I have something. Attempted murder. The hatchet you went for.
The pitiful mistake of a pitifully suspicious mind, Dollar. I wasn't reaching for that hatchet on the table. I was trying to show you something in the table drawer. There it is, spilled out on the floor. My wife's insurance policy. The
one your unscrupulous thieving superiors refuse to pay. The vampires? There, look at it. All in order. Much of it in fine print. Fine, just fine.
Okay, Yarbo, that did it. Come on, ahead of me.
Where are we going?
Find some place to lock you up. I was hired to stop you, and until I do, I'm at least going to try and slow you down. Now move. Linen closet. No room here. Come on. Bathroom. No window. Yeah, this'll do. Go on, get in there.
No, not in here. Anywhere but in here.
It's a good place. You may get thirsty.
No. This is where my wife died. Not in here. No.
Which, on the surface, may seem to have been a move on the cruel side. But Yarbo was a man obviously off his rocker, and I needed him more nervous than I already had him. Too nervous to attempt killing any more people. Expense account item 5, a nickel. Phone call. Downtown office, state police.
You expense the nickel, you
Mr.
cheap
and
fuck.
Mrs. Granville Morse had indeed crashed to their death on the great highway south of Steel Rock at 8:45, which made the lady with the early telephone news flash Martha, a gal with whom I wanted an early date. Come on in for the phone.
Hello? What is it?
Hello, Mr. Coach. This is Dollar.
Oh, yeah, Dollar. What do you want?
Well, first I want to tell you that you just lost 2 more policy holders. List price, $80,000.
Oh, good Lord. This is terrible. Who? How? What?
Never mind that. I've also got something else on the good side. I need your help tonight.
Of course. Anything. What can I do?
Meet me at your office. You and I are going to go looking for a dame named Martha.
Martha? Martha who?
I don't know, but I hope she works for you.
I'll be there in a half hour.
Make that 20 minutes, and you'll be 10 minutes closer to happy days. The office personnel records of the West Coast underwriters turned up not 1, but 3 employees named Martha, which gave me 3 choices as to who had been supplying Yarbo with a list of West Coast policy insurance policy holders. Finding the exact Martha was even easier. On the phone, she had told me that she was calling from the office, and the night elevator operator's in and out book showed the signature of one Martha Kinsey, and I just couldn't wait to hear her report. I've got a message from Mr. Yarbo.
Just a minute. Message from James. Oh, what does he want?
Well, what he really wants is to get out of the bathroom. That's where I've got him locked up.
Who are you?
You ought to know who I am. I assume you're the one that told Yarbo he could be expecting a call from an insurance investigator named Dollar? Well, that's me.
Well, I don't care. James told me girls give out lists of names all the time. Sell them for mailing lists. 10 cents apiece. May not be ethical, but it's not against the law. James told me, and I believe James. Oh, he's the smartest man I ever knew.
He may be the smartest, but he's right in line to be numbered among the deadest. One of these fine mornings, the state is going to give him a cyanide egg for breakfast.
What do you mean?
You should know. Murder, execution, gas chamber.
Well, you can't prove a thing. James told me so, and he knows. But he's smart.
I hope he's not smart enough to pick a lock with a bath mat. Now, come on, sit down. You and I are going to have a nice, long talk.
We are not. I won't say a thing. I don't have to, unless you have a warrant, an indictment, and a court reporter. James told me so.
Yeah, I know. He's smart. But no matter what he told you, you're going to tell me a few things.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, yes, you are. So, I was wrong. Martha didn't tell me anything. But her stubborn attitude did. She was in love with Mr. Yarbo, a stupid, middle-aged woman having her last fling at romance, doing her best to keep her last chance alive in the person of the man who had made her his partner in crime. As crazy as it was, this grotesque pair of lovebirds created the only real emotion in the case to date, and switched my thoughts from the widely scattered deaths which had brought me into the case and over to the single death of Yarbo's wife. I closed, find a transcript of statement made to me at 2 o'clock in the morning by the doctor who signed Mrs. Yarbo's death certificate.
Cause of death, cerebral hemorrhage, result of severe fracture of skull, region medulla oblongata. Contributing factors, woman bathing in bathtub at home, slipped and fell, striking head on shower spigot. Coroner's finding death due to misadventure, accidental.
It took the doctor 2 minutes to get around to making that statement. I figured it would take Martha at least 30 minutes to get her hair out of her curlers and make herself presentable enough to risk being seen on the street. That left me 28 minutes to get back to Yarbo's house before she did, and I didn't need half that long. In a cab on my way over, I took inventory. 1, to date, Yarbo's alibis covering him on all the so-called revenge murders had been perfect, too perfect. 2nd, when I first faced Yarbo, he screamed about his wife's death, not in the light of having lost his lady love, but in the light of having lost her insurance money. Just as my third most important conclusion came upon me, the taxi came upon our destination, and I had to go to work. Once inside the little horror house on Lombard Street, I got set for a long search. But it turned out to be a short one, and it proved 2 things. Yarbo was not only a murderer, he was as crazy as he'd acted in having kept the evidence around. Okay, Yarbo, come on out.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed your waste of time, Mr. Dollar, as I enjoyed my time for meditation. You saw Martha, I suppose?
Yes, I saw Martha. Bless her silent little soul.
Yes, I was sure of Martha. She believed in me.
You can say that again. Come on out here.
Mr. Dollar, I suppose you are aware that this is the 2nd time tonight you have been guilty of breaking and entering. I am, however, willing to forgive that should you come to your senses and decide to go back to Hartford and leave me alone. Mind treading on the roses in the rug, Mr. Dollar?
Sorry, Yarbo. I fell for that gag earlier tonight.
People who smile at that joke give me the laugh.
Now, look, Yarbo, I know exactly what you've been up to, and I know why you've done it. But your little war of nerves has got to stop.
It will never stop. No one can prove anything against me.
I can. I can prove that you haven't done a thing to bring about those accidental deaths you've been taking credit for. Martha has sat down at insurance office and notified you every time there's been an accidental death of a policyholder in this part of the country. Then you've written the company your little letters and gotten your little kicks out of it, right?
Mr. Lie.
The switch, a guy yelling that loud that he's guilty.
You will have to prove it. You will have to prove it.
Don't worry, chum. I'm not going to waste a breath proving murders that you didn't commit. But, brother, I'm really going to go to town on the one that you did. Your wife, Mr. Yarbo.
That is the most ridiculous statement you have yet made, young man. Look around you. Take note. I have profited by all the mistakes made by the original owners of these bloody souvenirs from Dr. Trippz on down. You see in me the living composite of them all, and I intend to stay that way, alive.
I'm afraid you will, but it's going to be inside an upholstered room. And this is what will put you there. Yeah, Mr. Yarbo, you carried your little hobby of crime souvenirs too far when you saved this hunk of pipe and the faucet with which you clubbed your wife to death.
She slipped and fell. She was in the tub.
I'm sure the police microscopes can give you a strong argument on that one. Now, come on. Now, let's make it easy on each other, shall we?
No, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Let go.
Whoa.
Let go of me. You have to prove it. You must be so help me, Martha. Help me. It will stop me.
I'd have found myself against the 2 of them if I didn't have to fight while playing hopscotch over those roses in the carpet, about which I still wasn't quite sure. It was touch and go. Martha would try to touch the back of my head with something, and I'd go.
Do something, Martha. Do something. I'll fix him.
Something Martha tried to do was pick up a heavy-based urn and aim it at me. She missed. It started to roll across the rosy carpet. When Yarbo saw where it was headed, he wrenched himself loose and dove to the side. I dove the other way. He got there just too late. I didn't have to look twice to know he was dead. Fate had called James Yarbo up on his own carpet. When Martha threw that urn at me, it had rolled straight for the only rose in the rug that had been booby trapped. Which only goes to prove that sometimes a rose by any other name can be anything but sweet. Expense account, item 6, $1.40. 3-month subscription, Love Life magazine. Sent to accessory to murder, Martha Kinsey, Tehachapi State Prison. I figured 3 months was about all she had, the judges and juries in California being rather efficient that way. Expense account, item 7, $6. Dinner and diving for pearls in a barrel of Blue Points at Fisherman's Wharf. Diving for Pearl's earring, which she lost while bending over the barrel trying to see what oysters look like. Item 8, $176.87. Airfare, San Francisco to Hartford.
What?
Expense account total, $942.08. Not including defense lawyer fees if you decide to sue me for not being able to add correctly. Signed, yours, truly, Johnny Dollar.
They get letters. They must have got letters.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Gordon T. Hughes and stars Charles Russell. Trippz by Paul Dudley and Gil Dowd. Featured in the cast were Jay Novello, Martha Wentworth, Paul DeBow, G.T. Pearson, and Larry Dobkin. The special music is written and conducted by Wilbur Hatch.
All of this is going on about 10 miles north of Minneapolis, where the former police officer Derek Chauvin is on trial for killing George
for 9 minutes and 29 seconds after they were called there for reports of a counterfeit $20 bill. The state is near the end of a case that kicked off with searing witness accounts of Floyd's arrest, followed by police supervisors and training officers testifying Chauvin wasn't following proper procedure in the neck restraint he used on
19 vaccines as of Saturday. People 18 and over make up the majority.
Distancing and follow prevention measures, especially during the upcoming May Day holiday.
We all would like to go out to enjoy the beauty of spring during the upcoming Labor Day holiday, but at the same time, we should not let our guard down about epidemic containment. Specifically, we should all avoid organizing or participating in mass gatherings and large meals during the holiday. Also, we should all observe the routinized anti-epidemic measures during our trips, such as wearing masks, keeping social distance, and washing hands. These measures must be maintained.
Meanwhile, health officials also encourage more people to get vaccinated against COVID-19 on a voluntary basis. India has reported over 170,000 COVID-19 deaths. The country has so far witnessed over 13.5 million infections in total. Former banker Guillermo Lasso has declared himself the winner of Ecuador's presidential runoff election, saying
camps to over 40 nations. The country has also joined the global COVAX initiative and pledged
deaths that occurred following vaccination with the Covishield vaccine. Covishield is the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccines manufactured by Serum Institute of India. Botswana started its COVID-19 vaccine program in late March, with the elderly given priority access to doses. The Southern African country has vaccinated more than 31,000 people. Somalia has received 200,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines donated by China.
In the wild race for riches.
Damn it.
for development, which requires further upgrades in the vaccine's quality and industrial chain.
To make the Chinese COVID-19 vaccines a global public good, the quality and security must completely conform to standards generally recognized by the world. The services must comply with established international rule of conduct, and the industrial chain must be safeguarded under internationally accepted practices. This means that the whole process and elements of the products and services must be compatible with the world.
Sinovac is a major vaccine maker in China. General Manager Yang Guang of Sinovac Biotech Hong Kong says they will provide more diversified vaccine products to more parts of the world.
We can take advantage of our own teams of technicians to provide services for regions where local medical demands have not been met. Combining the products provided domestically with those we develop targeting regional diseases, we can serve more areas in the world outside China.
Earlier this month, another Chinese COVID-19 vaccine developed by Sinopharm received the Good Manufacturing Practice Certificate, which is issued by the Hungarian authorities. It marks another step closer for Chinese jabs to becoming a global public good. Meanwhile, both the Sinovac and Sinopharm shots are expected to be reviewed by the World Health Organization for emergency use later this month. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Shai.
Zimbabwe is among the first African countries to have kicked off a vaccination camp.
Studio Plus.
Okay, we're not
gonna. Campaign. As Gao Jr. reports, life in the southern African country is coming back on track as the rollout of Chinese vaccines gains momentum.
Victoria Falls is a tourism resort, We depend by the tourists. It affected almost, I can say 100% of Victoria Falls.
Get up and act like you're a man. Get up, I say.
No, don't get head up.
It was just that you haven't got any more gumption than a rabbit, that's what. We need coffee and sugar.
All right. But yelling like you did, you made me drop the cup and saucer. For a minute, I thought my first wife, Maud, had come back from the grave to haunt me.
There you go. Reminded me again of your first wife. And me doing all I can to make you happy and all.
Now, it ain't fitting for a big woman like you to be sniveling.
Shut up, you shriveled up little bantam.
Hey, Dave, Beulah, calm down. I'd rather have you sniveling than yelling at me. At least Maud was consistent. Yeah, she was always yelling.
Get this park on and get out of here, or I'll do more than yell. Men up in this country look after their women folks.
Well, now, if you was to start on a trip down the trail, I'd stand out there and look after you until you were clear out of sight. Cold as it is, too.
Get out of here. I'm going.
Outside of his home, Casper would stand up to any man and had learned to be philosophical about the consequences, which were not often in his favor. For instance, when he arrived in town with a dog team.
Oh, there!
Yeah, that's right, bud.
Step aside, Rod. What? Listen here, mister, if you're talking to me...
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Get out of the way.
Oh!
There you shoved him right into the snowbank.
Yeah, look at him up to his neck. So long, short change.
Come on.
Guess I would have slipped into a snowbank sooner or later this winter anyway. My big mouth always did get my small muscles into trouble.
Man alive, Casper. You look like a snowman. What happened to you?
The two armies who just went out sort of brushed me off the steps into the snow.
Well, if you mean Buck Acton and Red Benson, you're lucky you weren't hurt, Casper. They don't come meaner than them two.
No, sir. Oh, they don't scare me, Mike. But my size don't back up my talk most of the time.
You should carry a
I
knife.
don't forget those two armies, though.
Two swords and an Uzi.
Give me some coffee and sugar, Mike. Regular amount of each.
Sure, I'll have it for you in a jiffy, Casper. Is there anything else, Casper?
No, that's all.
There you are.
Just charge him, Mike. I'll take him like that without having you bother with wrapping paper around him.
All right, Casper.
So long, everybody. great day, something wrong down at the bank. Two masked men with guns coming this way.
Hey, Red, let's take this sled. It'll save time getting the hidden one behind our cabin. You get on.
There. This is what having a team and sled ready. Wait a minute, you can't take my team.
I'll get back in the snowbank where you belong. Just like before, up to his neck.
Yeah, well, come on, let's get going quick.
Right. Yeah, we had to run another block, but had to bend for you, Shorty.
Come back! Wait!
Hey, there they are. They get away.
They have a gun sled with me. Help me out of this bank.
Hey,
Casper Mott, neck deep in the snow. Now, how'd you keep him? Busted them robbers, shoved me in here, that's how. They took my dog sled, too. Help me out.
Here, I'll give you a hand.
Yeah, that does it.
Get a look at their faces, Casper.
Yeah, they love the bank. They won't have that. I know all that. What bothers me is they got away with my dogs and sleds. Let's get to the constable right away and tell what we can about it. Hurry, come on, let's go.
A short time later, Casper and the others reported to the constable.
Constable, they stole my dogs and sled.
Yes, and that isn't the worst, Constable. They held up the bank and got away with several $1,000.
Well, who did now? What did they look like?
They wore bandanas, and they were both big fellas.
No, one was short, the other heavy set. Oh, you're both wrong.
Oh, no, wait.
All right, never mind. No one ever agrees about what crooks look like when something happens.
Well, all I know is they came running up and took over my team and sled. When I started to object, one of them shoved me in the snow, just like before.
Well, now, what do you mean, just like before?
Well, you see, what? Oh, it was them. It was the same two. Buck somebody and Red something or other.
You mean Buck Acton and Red Benson?
Yeah, that's the names Mike at the store called them.
Somebody's coming.
Yes, I think it's just the man I want to see right now. Sergeant Preston. I thought that was you stopping out front.
Hello, George. What's happened?
Well, Sergeant, this way. Bank's been robbed.
Quickly, the constable told Sergeant Preston what had happened. Preston listened closely. Then he turned to Casper and asked, Casper, are you sure they were Buck Acton and Red Benson?
Yep, I'm dead sure, Sergeant. I heard one of them say the name Red just after he shoved me. He laughed and said, just like before, up to his neck. I figured he was the one who shoved me the first time when I was going into the store.
I'll set out after them right away, George.
Oh, say, that'll be fine, Sergeant. If you want me to go along?
You might be needed here in town. Casper, you come along to identify them.
You mean me go to help capture them armed crooks?
That's right, Casper.
Well, all right, Sergeant. Anyway, I'd ask him to go home without the coffee and sugar. Bueller would swear I'd put the stuff on the sled and give a whole caboodle to them crooks just to spite her.
Well, let's get going. We're losing time. Come on, King. Meantime, Buck and Red were traveling at a fast pace along the trail. They were pleased when snow began to fall heavily, since it would make their trail difficult to follow. As they moved along, Red was saying,
The snow keeps from falling our tracks, Buck. Yeah. We're lucky the Red had a fast dog team. Yeah, but the storm will get worse. We're taking a big chance trying to go any distance. I know. Oh, there. Oh. I've been thinking, Red, that little guy's name is Casper Mott. Has a cabin over on the other trail. Yeah, what of it? Well, his wife must be there alone. Hasn't got his dog team, so he'll have to stay in town till the storm lets up and he can get some way to get out here. Yeah, I still don't get the idea. The idea is that we take the branch trail and go over to his cabin. Nobody will think of looking for us there. Hey, I think that'll work, Buck. We'll have a good place to stay and we can make his wife cook for us till we leave. Now, come on, let's get going. The branch trail's only a short way from here. All right, Monsieur
A short time later, Beulah Mott heard a dog team stopping outside the cabin.
Oh, that must be Casper coming back from town. Can't be Casper.
Howdy, ma'am. Come on in, Red.
No, just a minute, mister.
Get out of our way.
Why, you shoved me. You'll be sorry when my husband comes home, and he'll be along any minute.
Don't make me laugh. Yeah, who's afraid of that little half-pint?
You know Casper?
Know him. I pitched him into the snowbank twice today. The fact is, we're using his dog team and sled.
Using his dog team?
Yeah.
See here, what have you done to my Casper? Where is he?
He's safe enough. Probably sitting around town waiting for the storm to let up. But if he does show up here, he won't be so safe, eh, Buck?
Well, you stole his team. You're a couple of thieves. I'll get the shotgun.
Stay where you are.
A gun? And I am just a poor, defenseless woman, alone with two desperate killers.
Oh, for the love of Pete, stop the sniveling.
Give me that gun.
Hey, Red, get this big lummox away from me. I'll grab her arms. There, I got her. Yeah, now that I see her, I'll pity that little mutt-cat. We'll tie her up, put her in the other room, Red. If she causes any more trouble, we'll use a bullet on her. And on that half-pint, too, when he does show up.
We'll continue our adventure in just a moment. Wow, fellas and girls, look it. Man, oh man, here's the strongest man I've ever seen. Looks like Hercules.
I am a descendant of Hercules.
Boy, how's it feel to be as strong as Hercules?
No different.
Gosh, I'll bet you eat a lot.
3 good meals a day.
Gee. What's your favorite meal?
Breakfast, naturally.
Breakfast, huh? Say, ever eat Quaker puffed rice or Quaker puffed wheat?
Do I? Every day.
Oh, you like rice or wheat shot from guns?
Nothing better.
Boy, you must be champion Quaker puffed rice and wheat eater.
I am by the case.
What do you like best about them?
Oh, they're big.
Like
me. About 8 times normal size.
I'll bet you use lots of milk and cream.
Got my own cow.
Anything else you like about Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat?
That nut-like flavor. And they're good for you.
That's right. A fella like you needs plenty of food energy. And rice or wheat shot from guns furnishes extra food values of restored natural grade amounts of vitamin B1, niacin, and iron.
Any way you look at it, there's nothing like Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat.
Say, you're right. I guess you know Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat are never sold in bags or bulk. To get the original, crisp, fresh rice or wheat shot from guns, you always buy the big red and blue packages with the smiling Quaker man on the front. That's your guarantee that you're getting the one and only Quaker puffed rice and Quaker puffed wheat shot from guns. Try 'em for breakfast tomorrow. Now to continue. Sergeant Preston and King, with Casper riding in the sled, had started in pursuit of the crooks.
Don't see how you expect to trail them in this driving snow, Sergeant.
I can still see their tracks when we first started, but the snow's covering them up, Casper. This trail leads south to Beaver Creek.
I know. Reckon you'll have to push on till they reach there anyhow. There's no place to hole up between Selkirk and there.
That's right. Even if they don't stop at Beaver Creek, at least we'll find out when they went through and what trail they took. Someone's sure to see them in that small settlement.
Yep, that's good figuring, Sergeant. Sure is.
Well, they'll reach there in an hour or so. On, King, on! For a short time, the Mountie and Casper followed the trail. Then Casper pointed ahead.
Hey, look at there, Sergeant. King has turned and started along the branch trail just ahead. They wouldn't go that way.
King's following the trail from their scent, Casper. He knows what he's doing.
But there's nothing that way for them crooks. They'd be heading back to town that way.
Okay, Husky. Okay, hey, boy. Stay back here with me, fella. All right, on you, Husky. Preston headed the dog team straight ahead along the trail to Beaver Creek. But when they passed the junction where the branch trail turned off, King left Preston's side and once again headed along the branch trail. The great dog ran a short distance and then stopped and looked back, barking. Sergeant Preston once more stopped the team. King still insists on leading us along the branch trail, Casper. I feel sure he's right.
Dag nabbit, Sergeant, in a storm like this, that dog would be plenty wrong. And if he is, we'd lose good time. Stands to reason they wouldn't dare go back through Selkirk with everybody looking for him.
We'll follow King.
Well, I'll bet my dog team, when they get it back, along with anything else you name, that King Sniffer has gone back on him. I know this time he's...
Casper, look, King's found something in the snow short way up the trail. Let's take a look.
All right, come on. Probably a dead varmint of some kind. Dogs is always fussing over things like that.
What is it, boy? What have you found? Oh, look there, Casper. Pile of coffee beans in the snow from that torn paper sack.
What? Oh, forget what I said about betting, Sergeant. That paper sack of coffee was on my sled. Must have fallen off.
That means they did take the branch trail. Good boy, King.
I'd take off my hat to that dog. Except it's a hood and the weather's too cold. You always said I didn't have as much sense as a dog. I apologize, King. Yes, sir.
Good for you, boy. Now, wait here, King. I'll get the team. Will you in a minute, Casper?
King, if I had a dog like you at home, we could really rule the roost, huh, boy? He's bringing the sled. And from now on, I'm not going to say a word, King. You can lead the way.
As they moved along the branch trail, which curved back toward town, it wasn't long before the Mountie and his passenger were only a short distance from Casper's cabin. The thought that they'd soon pass his cabin struck Casper suddenly, and he called out,
"Hey, Sergeant, wait! Hold on, stop a minute!"
Okay. What's the matter, Casper? You sick?
Well, not exactly, but I just thought, Sergeant, that this trail goes right past our cabin.
Well, good. You can stop and tell your wife what happened. Find out she heard the other dog team pass.
Look, Sergeant, by some good luck, it seems you never got to meet me.
Why, no, I never did, Casper. Why?
But I wasn't so lucky. I did. Well, what I mean is, she'll blame me for it all. For losing the dog and sled, I mean.
I'll go in with you and explain.
Well, you won't go in with me. You'll go in first. In that way, I'll still be sound of wind by the time she's convinced. I never could reason with a woman.
I'm sure she'll be reasonable about it after I explain. We better get going. All right, 5 minutes later, they were approaching Casper's cabin. King and the dog team had quieted down. The only sound was the crunching of the sled. Suddenly, a sound was borne to them on the wind that caused Preston to halt the team once more. Okay, you hear that, Casper?
What?
Listen.
Sounds like dogs up yonder near my cabin.
Yes, but all your dogs were stolen by those two.
See, that's right. But my dogs used to quarrel like that when they got home.
Casper, I have an idea those crooks have stopped at your cabin.
Holy smoke. And with nobody to warn them about Beulah.
Hold on, Casper. This is serious. They may harm your wife. They just as soon shoot a woman as they would a man.
What? Jumping Juniper, I never thought of that. If they hurt my Beulah, I'll... Oh, great day, Sergeant. What can a little hombre like me do to protect his women folk anyway?
At least you have the right spirit, Casper.
Poor Beulah said only this morning that other men look after their women. She gets in a downright sniveling mood when she thinks of it.
Casper, I have a plan that will make Beulah look on you as a protector, at the same time help me capture those crooks. Are you game?
Sure I'm game. Just tell me your plan, and by cracky, if I don't end up in another snowbank, I'll see it through to the end. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Preston carefully outlined his plan to Casper. Then, moments later, the little man entered his cabin.
Hey, what the... Beulah, I'm home.
Hey, look, it's the run himself.
Gosh, old fishhooks. I didn't expect to find you bank robbers here at my cabin.
Hey, Buck, he must have recognized us in spite of the bandits.
Ah, what of it? How'd you get here? Mr. Nothing could keep me from coming back home to look after my wife. Even if I had to fight a blizzard on foot to do it. What? Beulah.
Never mind answering her. What I want to know is
any hombre who'd hook up with a big female like that is crazy enough to do anything, Buck. The shrimp probably did come through the storm on foot at that.
To put a bullet in him. Now, mister, no use waving that gun around. A little fellow like me couldn't do you any harm.
He's right, Buck. Put up the gun. What harm can that sawed-off run do? All right.
We'll tie him up and put him back there with her. I don't reckon I'll like that very much, but it's better than being dumped in a snowbank. Like you already did to me twice, mister. I thought of that when I passed the snowbank about 50 feet from the cabin. It must be 9 to 10 feet deep. Of course, you couldn't dunk me in that without having to carry me there first, so I'm not worried.
Oh, you're not, huh?
No? Well, I reckon if you're going to tie me up, you might as well...
Now, wait a minute. You know, Red, this short rib is acting so calm-like, I figure maybe he'd act different after he crawled out of a 10-foot snowbank.
No, wait a minute, mister. Not that. No.
Losing nerve already, huh? Open the door, Red. I'm going to give this little guy one more dunking. And this time it'll be in snow that's plenty deep.
Go ahead, Buck. I'll wait here till you bring him back.
Come here, you.
Let me go. Put me down.
I'll put you down, all right. Close that door, Red. I'll be right back.
Right, Buck.
There's that snowbank.
Suddenly, the figure of Sergeant Preston stepped behind Buck from his hiding place behind a snowdrift.
Hold it. Hey, down. Holding a gun in your back.
Hey, listen,
Keep quiet.
It worked, Sergeant. I teased him into bringing me out here for a dunking.
There, Casper. Tie his hands behind his back with this piece of rawhide. Quiet, boy, quiet.
I got his hands almost tied. That's a tight. There.
Good. Now, you get over there beside the cabin. Go on, walk. Meantime, I'll take your gun. All right, this is close enough. Call your friend.
I won't do it.
I said call him out here.
My arm. Not calling.
Go ahead, then.
Red. Hey, Red, come on out here.
Inside the cabin, Red heard Buck call. As he started toward the door, he glanced out the window and caught sight of Preston standing with a gun at Buck's back. Red turned and hurriedly went out the back way, and with gun in hand, crept along the side of the cabin. Sergeant Preston, Casper, and Buck were watching the front door. Buck was saying,
Guess you didn't hear me.
Call again.
Hey, Red, come here.
All right, Marty, I got you covered. Drop that gun. Drop it, I say.
Hey, Trippz. He's at the corner of the cabin behind you. Now, you better do like he said.
For a moment, Preston stood holding the gun. Then, realizing that Red could shoot before he could turn, Marty spoke.
All right. There's my gun.
Now, Buck, shut that gun off his lanyard.
Sure. Uh-oh, this is bad.
Darn right it is, short stuff. I'm going to put a bullet in this Mounty's back first, and then we'll settle with you.
As Red stood close behind him with a gun ready to shoot, Sergeant Preston realized death was near. He knew he had only seconds in which to act, and thoughts raced through his mind like lightning. He recalled a trick learned during his police training that was planned for such a spot as this. It was a chance, and he took it. With a sudden swing of his body, the elbow of his raised right arm struck Red's gun arm, and then Preston's left fist met Red's chin in a smashing blow. As Red went down, the gun flew from his hand, landing a short distance away. Sergeant Preston jumped ahead and grappled with him.
I'll let you get it.
I'll still fix you. No, no.
As the two men got to their feet and fought desperately, Buck, whose hands had been tied by Casper, made a superhuman effort to loosen them. Finally, the knot loosened and his hands came free. He lunged at Casper.
No!
As the big man lunged, Casper, by chance, landed a solid blow on Buck's chin.
No!
Buck went down.
Holy smoke, how'd I ever come to do that? I guess I didn't know my own strength.
For a moment, Casper stood looking at Buck in amazement, until a shout from Preston brought him to.
Casper, got the gun I dropped?
Yep, I'll get it.
Use it to cover Buck.
I got it.
Picking up the gun, Casper stood over Buck, keeping him covered as Sergeant Preston fought with Red.
I'll get you, Marty.
No, you don't.
During the commotion, the great dog King raced to the scene, ready to help. The intelligent dog stood and watched, waiting for a signal from Preston to enter the fray. But King could see that Preston was gaining the upper hand and had control of the situation. He watched, growling.
This will settle you.
I had enough. Wait, no more.
Get up.
I had enough.
Get over there with your friend.
Make us run. Let me get up, will you?
All right, let him up, Casper. We'll keep them covered. Picking. Watch him, fella. All right, you two. We'll all go inside now. Get going.
A few moments later, the group stood inside the cabin. Preston quickly searched both the men and found part of the bank money. The balance he found in their parkas.
This money proves your guilt.
You can't prove it. Shut up. I heard you admit you held up the bank. I bet Bueller heard it, too. You were talking plenty loud.
Oh, by the way, Casper, take Buck in the other room with a gun at his back and make him untie Bueller. I'll be near and so will King, so we can't pull anything. Go ahead, Casper.
Get going. Into the back room. Casper! Oh, Casper, it's you. Sure. Don't expect
perfect door hardware.
Now you untie my wife and be quick about it before I let go with a bullet.
Ah, if it wasn't for that.
Shut up and get busy, or I lose my temper. Now the cord on her ankles. Go on.
Yeah, hey, that might go off.
Yep, it might at that. There. Oh, Casper, you act so masterful, and I heard what you said out there about coming to take care of me. Uh-huh. Of course, it ain't nothing to snivel about, Bueller. I did have a Mountie follow me here, just in case. Now let's get to the other room. Sergeant, this here is my wife, Bueller.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Mott. And the things Casper has said about you, I'd be looking forward to meeting you.
Oh, Sergeant, here Casper goes around saying nice things about me, and all the time well, from now on, Casper, things will be different. Just to think you can look after me.
Oh, stop that chatter. This little
He
phantom
tricked you, Acton, by getting you to take him outside where I was waiting. I suggest you keep your mouth shut from now on.
I sure appreciate your help, Sergeant.
Dick and I appreciate yours, Casper. I know that you and your wife will be very happy from now on.
Oh, of course we'll be happy, won't we, Casper?
I reckon even King could tell you what my answer is to that, Beulah. Couldn't you, fella?
King and I'll take these trucks back to Selkirk now. Won't be long before we can say this case is closed.
In just a moment, Sergeant Preston will give you a preview of Wednesday's adventure. Hurry, climb aboard, fellas and girls. Anchors away for the best tasting breakfast cereal on the high seas or the dry land. Yes, the cereal shot from guns. The one and only Quaker Puffed Rice and Quaker Puffed Wheat.
Of COVID-19, people are worried about their health. They're worried about their jobs. People are talking about whether there is a crisis in public trust.
Restrictions in England are being lifted today after months of lockdown.
On traditions, heritage, colors, flavors, and its own connections to our natural world. I believe that our uniqueness and our diversity will always be our greatest strength as we stand together to build back better for now and for always.
165 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines as of Saturday.
That's why I tuned away last time, Shane.
Yukon, in the case of
one way.
circumstantial evidence.
Bill Andrews was convicted of murder on circumstantial evidence and sent to jail for life. Soon after he escaped, there was another killing, and again all evidence pointed to Bill. I knew he had been nowhere near the scene of the crime, but I couldn't prove it. I set a trap, hoping to catch the guilty man, but I didn't suspect that there were three killers. Things moved fast when the trap was closed.
Be sure to hear this exciting adventure Wednesday. These radio dramas, a feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated, are created by George W. Trendle, produced by Trendle Campbell Enterprises, directed by Fred Flowerday, and edited by Fran Stryker. The part of Sergeant Preston is played by Paul Sutton. They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time by Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, the breakfast cereal shot from guns. Your best bet for hot breakfast is Quaker Oats. The giant of the cereals is Quaker Oats.
Today, some business owners in London are optimistic about the return of business, while others are more hesitant because of the absence of foreign tourism.
Stupid that will destroy your image forever. So, public life is difficult, and all the premiers and the prime minister are doing their best. I would disagree with some of the things they do, but I'm not there, and I don't want to be the Monday morning quarterback.
Well, what are some of the things you would disagree with?
If they ask me, I will tell them, but not through TV.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you so much for taking our questions. We hope that you are well and you stay well, and we have the opportunity to talk to you again soon.
It was my pleasure to be with you today, madam. And good Sunday.
Mercedes Stevenson, Jean Chrétien on the West Block. If they ask me, I would tell them, but not through the TV. There's an awful lot of politicians in this country, provincial, federal, and municipal, that could listen to that little tidbit of advice right there. Because it's quite deplorable what the grandstanding, dramatic behavior of politicians has been through COVID, and then I would say the last 10 years, 5 years in particular. It's quite deplorable. Also with the West Block in Ontario, the hotspots are hotspots when it comes to COVID. Mercedes Stevenson had a conversation with a mayor who's at the heart of one of them, Mayor Bonnie Crombie of Mississauga.
Uprise, bringing you the adventure.
Rapid testing should be used to get the inferno of a COVID-19 pandemic.
All rabbits need
It's
to be
hot there,
tested.
under control.
You are in the middle of such a difficult place, such a hot spot in Canada. And one of the things that you've said you believe would make a difference is prioritizing city.
Goddamn rabbits.
For sure I am. What's up? Well, then, tomorrow morning, try a breakfast of Quaker Puffed rice or Quaker Puffed wheat topped with milk or cream and fruit. Boy, I just dare you to say it doesn't hit the spot. These ready-to-serve king-size kernels of premium wheat or rice are shot from guns. Yes, Quaker Puffed rice and Quaker Puffed wheat are actually exploded up to 8 times normal size. That's why they're so crisp, tender, delicious. Tomorrow, just you try this breakfast treat. Quaker Puffed rice or Quaker Puffed wheat.
The end of the beginning.
The girl watched the big black-bearded man put on his parka. She stood with her back to the door, her fists clenched, her lips trembling.
Stand aside, Nancy. I'm leaving.
Please, Uncle John, please let me go with you.
No, I'm to carry a full load of supplies I can't carry back.
The inferno, as the premier has called us, so they can do the most work. Let's be honest, if we can't get the virus under control here in the hotspot zones in Peel and the city of Toronto, we can't stop the virus. It will continue to control us. We won't be controlling it.
Who do you think should be prioritized to receive those vaccines? We've been doing it according to age, but I know you've talked about essential workers as being a priority.
It's a great question, and I'm so grateful that there's a greater supply of vaccine coming in now, and it's made a huge difference. So we at first the framework allowed for the most vulnerable to be vaccinated, our seniors who were hardest hit, most impacted in the first wave, and then again.
That's great.
I'm not gonna lie, it's good to be moving on. Now I'm taking a breath, I'm living my fantasy. The future is a mist.
Britain's open for business.
Did you think they were going down the wrong road?
Well, they were trying. You know, we were lost. They were trying. They were functioning according to the information that they had from witnesses. I was lost also.
By late 2005, there were now more than a dozen unsolved murders of elderly women in the capital, and still no sign of an arrest. Then, in January 2006, the police got a lucky breakthrough. The suspect was caught fleeing the home of an 82-year-old woman who'd been strangled with a stethoscope. The suspect was identified as the former female wrestler, Juana Barraza, known in fighting circles as La Dama del Silencio, the Lady of Silence. Dr. Ostrowski was out of town at a wedding. She rushed back to the capital and went straight to the jail.
I said, give me an office where I can interview her in an open space. I was afraid a little bit.
And what did she look like? What was your first impression of her?
She was a big woman. She has the hair was short, but it was painted red.
When you sat down with her on that first day, how did you start the conversation?
I said, hi, I'm Dr. Ostrowski, and I'm here to talk to you. So that's how we started to talk, and I said, well, you are here because they said that you killed somebody. And at that moment, she said, yes, I killed that woman. And then I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, so is it bad that what you did? I want to see her sense of it's wrong or right what you're doing. And she said, oh, yes, it's bad. And I said, why is it bad? And she said, because nobody has a right to take the life of another one.
What did that tell you about her?
It's like what I knew about the mind of a psychopath. You know what's right or wrong, but that doesn't inform you emotionally. That doesn't guide your behavior.
That first day, the two women spent several hours together, during which time Barraza admitted to 2 other murders, though she later retracted the confession. From then on, Dr. Ostrowski began visiting her every day, asking her questions about other murders, about her family, about her childhood.
You know, she just like sort of smiled a little bit when she was telling me her family's history. But there was not emotion. She was really detached and really cold. She once said, you know, I like you because you are really bossy and you are tough like me. So I like you. And I said, well, I like you also, Juana. So thank you.
And did you like her, Doctor?
I did like her.
And Barasa, for her part, seemed to trust Dr. Ostrowski. She told the doctor how her alcoholic and abusive mother had given her away to a man in exchange for drink. The man got Barasa pregnant, although she was still only 13 years old. She was sent back to live with her mother, and then had to look after her younger siblings, as well as her own baby. Did you ask her whether she hated her mother?
Oh, yes.
And what did she say?
She said, yes. I hate her. She was terrible. See, the only good figure in my life was my stepfather.
That must have affected you, having to listen to to everything she was telling you.
Oh, of course. I couldn't sleep.
They spent almost 2 weeks together, Dr. Ostrowski visiting her in jail most days. But the trust that she'd built up with Barasa suddenly disappeared. Dr. Ostrowski had gone to see Barasa's half-sister and daughter without telling her, and when she saw her the next day, Barasa was furious and told her never to come back.
Like mentioned, so what did Dr. Ostrowski conclude about the mass killer?
Well, after hours and hours of interviewing her and conducting investigations on her, she concluded that Juana Barasa most likely committed these terrible murders because of the abuse that she'd suffered as a child at the hands of her mother. But she also discovered that Barasa's brain had an overactive frontal lobe, which she concluded was another possible reason for her violent behaviour. So it was both sort of how she'd been brought up, but also a physical defect in her brain.
Nature and nurture. And what did happen in the end then to Juana Barasa, or has happened now?
She was sentenced to more than 700 years in jail. She's now 63 years old, and probably she'll spend the rest of her life there.
What if she lives to like
story. Next, what's in a name? Well, for many place names around the world, the answer is a great deal. It's 30 years now since the Russian city of Leningrad voted to abandon the name of the leader of the Russian Revolution, Lenin, and to return to its historic name of St. Petersburg. The communist system was already collapsing in 1991 when the hugely symbolic referendum was held. Tina Newman has spoken to Ludmila Nurisova, one of the main players behind the fought campaign back then to change the city's identity.
In 1991, after 70 years of communist power, Russia was in search of a new identity. St. Petersburg was Russia's old capital, founded by Tsar Peter the Great as Russia's window on Europe. In 1991, Ludmila and her husband, Anatoly Sobchak, felt they were following in Peter the Great's footsteps when they suggested a referendum on changing the city's name back to St. Petersburg. They too wanted to develop a closer relationship between Russia and European countries.
The blood of many Russian people was given to this city. It was called Leningrad for just a short time compared to the centuries when it was St. Petersburg. It's a symbol. If we return to the blessing of St. Peter, we will get rid of the curse that has been on our city for almost 70 years.
By a curse on our city, Sobchak meant the decades of communist dictatorship. Communists had promoted Russia's old capital as the birthplace of their revolution in 1917. In 1924, they named it Leningrad in honor of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the revolution. Since that time, Lenin's teaching had been sacred to generations of Soviet communists.
What is Soviet power? What is the meaning of this new kind of power? It means that whereas in the past the state was controlled by capitalists or the rich, now for the first time, The state is controlled by the classes, exploited under capitalism.
Soviet schoolchildren learned passages like this from Lenin's speeches by heart. But in 1991, Lyudmila Narusova and her fellow reformers offered a completely different interpretation of Lenin's legacy.
Я считаю Ленина самым большим популистом.
I believe Lenin was a great populist. He promised factories to workers and land to peasants. These were populist promises, never to be fulfilled. That was what Lenin was all about. He created the first concentration camps for those who opposed the new power and sent many leading intellectuals into exile.
Such talk enraged Leningrad's communists. People were shocked by such a radical revision of history. Throughout the referendum campaign, city residents took to the streets to debate the issues.
Campaigners who want Leningrad restored to the original St. Petersburg gathered in the main square in determined mood, despite torrential rain. The hardline communists are fighting to keep Leningrad, and on this issue there were undignified scuffles. The old guard outraged at the challenge to their historic struggle.
The most compelling argument for keeping Lenin's name was that the city had survived 900 days under siege by German forces during World War II. It was known around the world as the Siege of Leningrad.
After 2.5 years shut within its defenses, Leningrad raises the siege imposed by the Germans since August 1941. These pictures, which have just arrived, take us back to January of this year, to the northern capital of Soviet Russia on the river Neva, with units of the Baltic Fleet adding their superstructure to the skyline of the besieged city. The story of Leningrad's resistance matches that of Stalingrad. Its people had endured the greatest hardships. During the winter, many thousands died from starvation.
In 1991, veterans of the siege struggled to come to terms with the proposal to drop Lenin from the city's name.
Leningrad survived through the blockade, this man said. I was prepared to die for it, and whatever they say, we should still fight to save it.
Lyudmila Narusova and her husband Anatoly Sobchak became the most prominent targets for the protesters.
This was the last stronghold of communists, Lenin and his legacy. They fought their case passionately. I remember 24-hour vigils outside our home where old communists sang revolutionary songs and shouted, "Sobchak, out of our city, we won't let you dump Lenin's name," and so on.
Right up until the last day, the city was split almost 50-50 on the issue of the name change.
When pollsters predicted the result at 49-50 or 50-49, on the eve of the referendum, the Orthodox Church published its opinion in the main evening newspaper. I quote, "Leningrad is an ideological construct imposed upon the name of St. Peter, in whose honor the city was named."
A Russian Orthodox service was held on the steps of the Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul, closed by the communists. Church leaders here want the city to bear the name of St. Peter.
The referendum was held on June the 12th, 1991. Russians were also voting to elect a president, and Moscow and Leningrad were also electing mayors. In the country as a whole, the leader of Russia's reformers, Boris Yeltsin, was elected president. In Leningrad, it was a clean sweep for change. The people of the city voted for Lyudmila's husband, the reformer Anatoly Sobchak, as mayor, and for the city's name to change to St. Petersburg, although it was by no means a foregone conclusion.
This was a surprising result. A slim but safe majority voted yes to the referendum question, do you want the name of this city returned to St. Petersburg? Opinion polls before the ballot had predicted a resounding vote against such a change.
Lyudmila says the joy of abandoning Leningrad's Soviet legacy was even greater than the joy of her husband being elected as mayor.
Это было совершенно непередаваемое чувство каких-то грандиозных.
It was an indescribable feeling of great romantic illusions and hopes that this was the first step up a great ladder. Many of our hopes did not come to pass. The enthusiasm fizzled out during the painful years of economic shock therapy, suffering and hardship.
Which did indeed follow. Ludmila Nurisova was talking to Dina Newman about the renaming of St. Petersburg in 1991. And there's a whole raft of first-hand testimony about those times and the Soviet era which preceded them on our website. Search for BBC Witness History Collections. Finally this week, Alex Last, as promised, has been looking at the history of quite an important part of our atmosphere. It's the remarkable story of the discovery of the jet stream.
Our story begins in 1944, when, towards the end of the Second World War, the United States sent their new high-altitude bomber, the B-29, to the Pacific to launch a ferocious bombing campaign on Japan.
The 73rd Wing lines up for takeoff. 15 hours, 7,000 gallons, 4 engines, 11 guys. Destination, Tokyo.
Launching from island bases, the planes would fly in daylight some 6 miles up at over 35,000 feet to drop their bombs on the Japanese mainland. Lieutenant Ed Hyatt was a B-29 pilot.
After flying 6 hours, we climbed up to bombing altitude. We climbed up to 37,000 feet. And just as we broke out of the storm, there's Mount Fuji sitting right in front of us. And it's a gorgeous sight, it really is. So we made a turn towards the target, which was in the northwest section of Tokyo.
Now, the B-29s were equipped with a bit of technology, the Norden bomb sight, which was designed to allow the crews to drop their bombs accurately on the target by adjusting for the plane's actual speed over the ground. But soon these US bomber crews noticed something was going very wrong. They were going too fast.
Glenn found the target, put the telescope of the bomb sight on the target, and it kept going out in front of it. He said, I can't get this damn telescope on the target. And so we called a radar operator and checked our ground speed and see what our ground speed is. He came back and he says, we've got a 125 knot tailwind. He said, we're going about 480 miles an hour. It's impossible. It can't be. There's no winds like that. We're going 480 miles an hour when we should be going 340 miles an hour. I said, well, Glenn dropped the damn bombs. He dropped the bombs, and we were already 12 miles past the target because of that wind.
Unknown at the time, what they'd actually encountered was a kind of global river of wind, what we now call the jet stream.
So the jet stream is essentially a wind, but it's a very fast, narrow current of air that forms this wind. I mean, I say narrow, but they're actually several hundred kilometers across, and it's strongest around 6 or 7 miles up in the atmosphere. And it blows around the whole globe, and it affects weather and climate.
Professor Tim Wollings from Oxford University is the author of Jetstream, A Journey Through Our Changing Climate.
There are two main jet streams, one going around the northern hemisphere, and then there's a clear jet stream which blows all the way around the southern hemisphere. And so this is what they've encountered, just one small regional part of a huge current of air blowing around the whole globe. Nobody really knew that the jet stream was there as such a kind of a strong, narrow current. I mean, people had suspected that there were winds at upper levels. Even back in the 1700s, people predicted there would be an opposite to the kind of trade winds that we see in the tropics. But no one really expected them to be so strong and so narrow.
When they debriefed us, they gave us a third degree. They wouldn't believe us. There's no such thing as 140 miles an hour wind up there over Japan. They said, no, there is no such thing. There can't be a wind like that. You're lying. You didn't make it over the target. You're just making this up. And if it hadn't been that we had our operations officer as a passenger with us, and he vouched for it and said, yes, they did have that wind. I saw it. I heard Bouscalis tell them you had that wind. He said there was a wind that high.
With more missions, the evidence grew and became irrefutable. There was a strange high-speed stream of air over Japan, and it posed problems. Lieutenant David Braden was a B-29 navigator. He noticed that if you flew against the jet stream, you could effectively be going nowhere.
To tell you how powerful these winds were, a reconnaissance plane went up one time to take some pictures after a mission to see how effective they'd been, and the navigator called the pilot and told him they were going 3 miles an hour backwards. That was something you couldn't afford to do, because if you went from east to west, you were going to be a sitting duck for Japanese fighters or their flag.
And the discovery of this phenomenon forced the American Air Force to change tactics with devastating consequences. Instead of high-altitude precision daylight bombing, the Americans switched to doing low-level nighttime carpet bombing using incendiary bombs, which created firestorms and laid waste to whole Japanese cities, killing hundreds of thousands.
The aircraft was designed for high-altitude precision bombing. We ended up using it for low-altitude blanket bombing. Totally different approach. The reason was primarily the jet stream. We were simply unable to hit the target.
But though the discovery of these high-altitude, high-speed winds over Japan was new to the Americans, in fact, a Japanese scientist had discovered all this decades earlier. His name was Wasaburo Oishi.
Wasaburo Oishi was a Japanese meteorologist, and back in the 1920s, he was tasked with establishing the first kind of upper air observing station, certainly in Japan and probably anywhere in the world. And so in the early 20s, he took very careful measurements using balloons, which really showed incredibly strong winds high up over Japan. He regularly had winds of around 150 miles an hour, up at about 7 miles up over Japan. And this was really the first time that anyone had really kind of properly measured the jet stream.
That's Professor Tim Wollings talking to Alex last. And Alex, why was it that the sort of global news of the jet stream's discovery didn't leak out earlier, before the Americans said that they had discovered it?
Well, it's a funny story, really. It turns out that Wasaburo Oishi thought that the best way to share his findings with a global audience was to write up his research in Esperanto. That's that invented international language that was developed at the end of the 19th century. The problem was, Esperanto didn't prove very popular, so no one read it, at least in the West. But actually in Japan, people had read his research in Japanese, and while the Americans were actually bombing Japan, the Japanese military had an ingenious plan. They used Oishi's research to launch these balloon bombs in the hope that these high-altitude winds that he had noticed, the jet stream, would carry these balloons and their bombs all the way to the west coast of America. And they launched thousands of these things. Some did actually make it. One was actually found by some kids playing in some woods in Oregon, and it detonated, killing 6, tragically. But crucially, these balloon bombs showed that the winds over Japan wasn't just a local thing. These winds were transcontinental. And of course, after the war, then people really started to study the jet stream, and it revealed its impact on our planet.
Indeed, the impact very significant today, because the aircraft fly so much higher, commercial aircraft, that they can make use of the jet stream.
Yes, I mean, the actual the jet stream is pretty wide. It's narrow in the global sense, but wide enough that you can have several planes in the jet stream at the same time. It's pretty amazing, and it speeds everyone up if you're going in the right direction. You've got to be going in the right direction, west to east.
We do cover some extraordinary stories of discovery here on the History Hour and the Witness History Programme on the World Service, innovations that have shaped the modern world. Louise, you covered some in the past. What's the stick out for you?
I think the stick out conversation I had was with the engineer Marty Cooper, and he invented the first mobile phone. So an invention that has really changed all our worlds, hasn't it? And he's still fizzing with ideas. He's in his early 90s now. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me, actually, from our conversation was he's an engineer. And he said, give us engineers 6 months and complete freedom, carte blanche, and we will solve climate change. And I did think, wow, that's a challenge that policymakers should maybe take up.
Did you get the impression that he knew what he was doing, what he had unleashed when he invented the mobile phone?
I think he had hopes for it, and his hope was that it would be a personal phone that everybody would have with them, and that they could talk to anyone anywhere in the world with. And that's basically come true. That was his vision.
Louise Hidalgo, thanks very much for that. And also thanks to Mike Lanchin and Alex Last, who've been with us for this programme. That's it, though, for this episode of The History Hour. Until next time, this is Max Pearson from me and the team. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
You're listening. Drums pounding away. Asking Dad, can you go out and throw the ball with me? I wish he were here today. I would give him the biggest bear hug.
And just as sure as there's justice in the Yukon, you'll hang for your crimes.
Oh, Sergeant.
All right, Nancy. You don't have anything at all to be afraid of anymore.
I fired 3 times. I thought you didn't hear the shot.
I didn't hear the shots, but King did. That's why we're here. That's why the case is closed. In just a moment, Sergeant Preston will give you a preview of Friday's adventure. Remember, here's the breakfast that wins the praise of so many He-Man Hollywood movie stars.
It's nutritious, delicious Quaker puffed wheat or Quaker puffed rice.
You too will go for wheat or rice shot from guns. You'll want to try them starting tomorrow. Say, fellas, you go for basketball, baseball. You like to attend gym? Want to learn to swim? Boy, I bet every one of you does. And I'm sure many of you fellows are interested in music, dramatic clubs, learning real trades like carpentry. Well, that's what boys' clubs offer boys age 8 to 20. Ask your parents if your town has a boys' club. Remember, the boys' club is your club. All boys are welcome.
Socialist.
The clubs are sponsored by non-sectarian, non-profit organizations of public-spirited adults who operate the clubs for the benefit of the boy members. So here's a big hand to the Boys Clubs of America and the wonderful work they're doing in building the citizens of tomorrow. These radio dramas, a feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated, are created and produced by George W. Trendle, directed by Fred Flowerday, and edited by Fran Stryker. The part of Sergeant Preston is played by Paul Sutton. They are brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time by Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice, the breakfast cereal shot from guns. Listen Friday when Sergeant Preston and Yukon King meet the challenge of the Yukon in the case Trouble at 40 Mile. When the inspector at Dawson City asked me to take King and go to 40 Mile because of trouble there, we had no idea of the mysterious happenings that had been going on. I ran into plenty of trouble, and the mystery of the locked cabin almost had me stumped and almost cost the constable his life. Believe me, I was thankful King was with me on that case. Be sure to hear this exciting adventure Friday. Boys and girls, can you guess what your dog likes best? That's right, meat. That's why over 1 million cans of Kennel Ration are sold every week. Because Kennel Ration is made with lean red meat. Choice cuts of U.S. government-inspected horse meat. Have Mom open a can. She'll like the appetizing aroma, and you will actually see the chunks of meat. And Kennel Ration has all the vitamins and minerals that help keep dogs in top health. Have Mom get Kennel Ration today. Kennel Ration, first in canned dog food. This is J. Michael wishing goodbye, good luck, and good health from Quaker Puffed Wheat and Quaker Puffed Rice. So long. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
You're listening to Chin Radio AM 1540, the voice of multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
I'm Olive Soap, your beauty hope, and Luster Cream Shampoo for soft, glamorous, caressable.
Iranian officials have already described it as nuclear terrorism, while Israeli media have suggested that Israel most likely carried out a sabotage operation. Iranian state media quoted Mr. Zarif as saying the Israelis wanted to take revenge because of Iran's progress towards having sanctions lifted. News from the BBC. Politicians in Britain will pay tribute today to the Queen's late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, following his death on Friday. The House of Commons in London and the Scottish and Welsh Parliaments are being recalled so members can offer their condolences. Tributes will also be made in the House of Lords and the Northern Ireland Assembly. Officials on the Caribbean island of St. Vincent say ashfall from a volcanic eruption has badly affected the country's water supply. Most of the country's electricity has been cut, and thousands of people are sheltering in evacuation centres. The island's Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, told the BBC many properties have been damaged, but there have been no deaths or injuries. A Conservative former banker, Guillermo Lasso, has declared victory in Ecuador's presidential election, after winning more than 50% of the vote. Mr. Lasso told his followers in the city of Guayaquil it had been a historic day, saying Ecuadorians had decided their future.
Hoy es un día de celebración.
Today is a day to celebrate. Democracy has won. The Ecuadorians, all of you, have used your right to vote and have chosen a new path, a path so different from the last 14 years in Ecuador. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of being your president and to serve you.
His rival, Andrés Arauz, congratulated Mr. Lasso and said he would continue working for the things he promised during his campaign. He had campaigned on a promise of returning Ecuador to socialism. A Dutch travel company is flying nearly 200 people to Greece for an 8-day holiday.
Here's what we have for you this hour. Are you okay? We're into that in a couple of minutes. There was a couple of pieces here of Saturday Night Live before we get into the news stuff of the day that we wanted to provide a little bit of fun for your morning. Saturday Night Live highlighted systematic racism in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minnesota police officer accused of killing George Floyd, in his newest cold open. The show also highlighted the death of Prince Philip, DMX, and recent accusations of sex trafficking of a U.S. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. All of that for you here on The Shift.
Good afternoon, and
I'm at my vegetable patch. I promise it's in the name of work, though.
I'm starting to worry about you, Graf. Last week, I heard you were basically watching a bunch of movies for the show. Now you're gardening?
Yeah, well, Neil, you conveniently miss out that they were climate-related movies. Anyway, whilst you've been practicing your snowplow, I've been investigating a simple device that has changed, well, everything.
Yeah, I mean, it has transformed human civilization. It has transformed human history, even in many ways.
It's not fire. It's not the wheel. It's not the car.
It's your phone.
Nope. It's the plow. But today, some see it as a threat to the climate.
We either bury the plow, or at least we need to seriously modify how we're using the plow, because it's not clear that the land can continue to take that much disruption.
From the BBC World Service, this is The Climate Question.
And our question this week, is it time to bury the plow? So to be clear, when we're talking about the plow, what we're really talking about is the soil, and we need someone who knows it really well.
I started learning about soils as an undergraduate student at the University of Asmara in Eritrea, and it turned out it was even more fascinating than I thought. And so here we are, many years later, still studying soils.
Today, Asmert Asapel-Buhe is a professor of soil biochemistry at the University of California, Merced, which is in California's fertile Central Valley.
It's the largest agricultural region in the country. People affectionately call this region the breadbasket of the U.S. And so there are farms up and down where I live.
When we think about climate change, we usually think about CO2 or carbon dioxide up in the sky. But as Moret says, we should also be thinking about the carbon beneath our feet.
There is twice more carbon in soil than there is in both vegetation and the atmosphere globally combined.
Wait, so that's like all plants everywhere, all forests, all grasslands, all croplands, and everything that's in the sky, all of that, and then double it? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Wow. So that's a lot.
Yeah, That's a lot of carbon that's in soil.
What's your fucking
How does the soil store carbon?
The way I like to explain it is that the way that soil can store carbon is very similar to how our bank accounts operate. There is carbon that comes into the soil. This is the carbon that plants take up from the atmosphere as carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, and they use this carbon to build their biomass. And upon death of those plants or other organisms that feed on the plants, their biomass enters the soil. And so that's the main input mechanism of carbon to soil. But soil is not just a function of how much is coming in, but it's also how fast the carbon that's in soil is getting lost through process of decomposition and returning back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And that part of the last part of the process is conducted by microbes and microbial organisms in soil. So ultimately speaking, how much carbon we have in soil depends on the balance between input of carbon from photosynthesis and loss through decomposition.
So it's a cycle. Carbon comes, carbon goes.
Yeah,
but if we want to avoid the worst effects of climate change, we need to keep our carbon credits banked underground.
She's going one step further.
Isn't
After it's dead,
happening
it'll
so
be in the soil.
much.
That's not
We
helpful
started dipping into our overdraft thousands of years ago with the birth of
90% of a plant
agriculture and later the plough.
is carbon dioxide.
Here's
absorbed in the
Pete
air.
Smith, the professor of soils and global change at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland.
Our ancestors were hunter-gatherers, so they didn't farm. They just gathered what they could in the forest and on the savannas, and they hunted for all of their food needs.
For reasons we don't entirely understand, some of our ancestors either got fed up with this or were pushed into a new way of getting food. They started to grow their own.
There are some archaeological artifacts from the Middle East that suggest this happened around 12, 13, 14,000 years ago in the wake of the last ice age. At first, they grew varieties of things like barley and herded wild animals like goats and oxen.
Barley.
It probably took millennia to go from that to fields and eventually to using an oxen-pulled plough.
We've been growing tomatoes for 10,000 years.
The plough just turns over the soil to make it receptive to planting the seeds in. So you know that it's difficult to plant a seed directly into the soil because it's hard and you may have weeds on the surface. By turning the soil over, you expose the soil underneath, you turn the weeds underneath, and you can more easily get the seed in.
Easier to get the seeds in, easier for the seeds to grow, easier to produce ever more food.
That allowed us to settle in one place and also freed up time that we would have to spend otherwise, hunting and gathering. It freed up time to do other things. So to build roads, to build infrastructure, to start connecting, and also more time for arts and culture and music. So really it went hand in hand with the beginning of civilization.
We grow food at home, we don't need roads. We're just going to stay home.
But while the plough was giving us more food and time, it was also making small withdrawals from that carbon bank account in the soil.
So when we use a plow, what happens to the carbon in soil is we see a rather rapid, drastic loss of carbon. And that's because as it's loosening the soil, then it introduces oxygen. But the introduction of air and oxygen into the soil creates optimal conditions for microbes to be able to break down the carbon that's in soil.
This wasn't a huge problem when we were strapping plows to cows, but strap them to tractors and you get industrial farming. And today the withdrawals are much bigger, and we're not just taking out carbon.
So there was a recent report released by the United Nations that indicated that about a third of the world's soils are degraded, meaning their ability to support plant production is compromised, is because of human actions and largely because of issues that have to do with over-tillage of the land and erosion by wind and water in particular. And the reason why it becomes a really widespread problem is also that soil takes a long time to form. The typical numbers we mention is that about a centimeter of soil can take up to 1,000 years to form. But
1,000 years?
Yes, but it could be lost rather quickly though, with things like erosion. This is why it's very important that we link these discussions when they involve rehabilitation of degraded soils that there has to be the financial backing behind it, the political will behind it to actually allow farmers to go through with these things. But it's way, way easier to protect soils from being degraded than it is to try and reclaim degraded soils. But I think at the end, the benefits are clear of what a healthy soil is able to support versus a degraded soil.
We went to one farm, but I know the benefits well. My name is Blake Vince, and I'm a 5th-generation farmer from Merlin, Ontario, Canada, which is approximately 55 to 60 kilometers east of Detroit, Michigan, in deep southwestern Ontario.
Fun fact from a fellow Canadian, he's about as far south in Canada as you can get. It's in line with Rome.
Really? I always think of Canada being cold and snowy, and actually I have to say that view was rather reinforced by what Blake told me.
So it's about -4 this morning with a slight skip of snow. So it's a fine way to start the month of April. I guess March went out like a lion.
And that wind is something else.
That second voice you heard is Andrew Campbell. He's a podcaster and farmer, and together they're sat in Blake's kitchen, sheltering from the weather.
Blake grows corn, soybeans, and wheat on fields that were cleared of trees almost 200 years ago. The decision to ditch the plow and start what he calls no-till farming came at a crucial time for his family.
So 1983 is when we started no-till farming, and the reason we decided that was due to necessity.
Wow.
My dad and my 2 uncles at the time were farming together, and they had crop. It was in storage, actually. And where it was stored, that business went into receivership. And their beans were seized as assets of the creditor. And so they had to go to the spring of the year, to the field that was, with less money in their pocket. They realized that they needed to, in short order, figure out how they could be more profitable by doing less, spending less, saving more. And they started on their journey of no-till farming. And so the rest is history.
If I can jump in just with one quick question here, because it is one where if they had to sell all that stuff out of necessity, why do you think they didn't go back once things got better?
Well, I think they didn't go back because they saw that it was profitable. It was working. And they're like, we're saving all this time.
You think we can do that with this show? Maintain our yield with a little less work?
Says the person who's just come back from holiday.
I think part of me is still there.
You've been doing this for 30 years, Blake. What sort of effects has there been on the land?
So the effects that we see in our land are increased water infiltration and water holding capacity. We see our soil organic matters have risen dramatically. And then, of course, all of the extra soil organisms that are just teeming. When we dig in the soil with a shovel, a round top shovel, I'll pull out 45 earthworms per shovelful of soil. And that's incredible numbers. And, then we start to see fruiting bodies of fungi that we didn't see before, and on and on and on. And those are the positives that we're starting to see on the farm landscape as it pertains to biodiversity.
Andrew, don't hate me, but would you mind if stepping outside for like 2 minutes?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm going to throw my coat on here.
Excellent. I want to see those 45 earthworms.
We're going to start counting them.
It's kind of cold today. I think they're hibernating. They've decided spring has not. Oh, look, right on cue. There's an earthworm there, Andrew. Not too bad. And I'm going to get you to say like I did before, right? I want you to use your senses. Just bring that up to your nose and tell me what it smells like.
It's got a very rich, like this smells like spring dirt to me, which always comes, but it seems very early for that very like rich, light, like, I don't know, it has that almost like a fresh rain type scent to it.
Oh, mold.
Yeah, no, those are Actinomyces that are being released, and that's I think that's what farmers get addicted to. I always say if I could bottle that up as a perfume, I'd be a multimillionaire because I just direct market it to farmers. And then on top of that, blend that with a little hint of diesel fuel,
and it would be just great, right? We could do this, and like to the benefit of the soil. Like I think we're onto something.
That smell that was what was being released. What was that?
Cinnamoises.
How do you spell it?
Oh my gosh, I'm not very good right now.
That's okay.
I'll look it up for you.
Well, what are they? What are they?
They're just like microbes. It's what lives in the soil. So it's basically the smell of life.
He texted me the spelling ACTINOMYCETES. His excitement for all this is infectious. It doesn't just smell good, it's good for biodiversity, for water retention, for stopping erosion, all important things, to be sure, especially as we look to feed a growing global population on a warming planet.
But we're a climate show, so we want to know whether this is putting our carbon bank balance into the positive. Here's Pete Smith in Scotland again.
Yes, there is a controversy. Some scientists say that the carbon might not be stored, it might just be redistributed. So when you're not ploughing, it allows carbon to accumulate in the surface, but they argue that it's depleted further down. And when you plough it, you just mix all that carbon up.
So some argue that no-till farming might make almost no difference when it comes to keeping carbon in the soil. A paper in the scientific journal Nature Climate Change a few years back concluded that the role of no-till in mitigating climate change is, quote, widely overstated.
But other studies have reached the exact opposite conclusion. There could be a few reasons for that, like how they measure the soil carbon. Some just take samples from the topsoil, others go much deeper. Or Pete says it could just be where the experiments are being done.
It's all carbon.
So I think zero tillage has been oversold, really, as a magic bullet. The suggestion that it will work everywhere and is something that we can use to tackle climate change, I think oversells it.
Given all you said, what do you think? Is it time to bury the plough?
I don't think so, no. It's a matter of better defining the situations in which ploughing is beneficial and defining those situations where zero till could be beneficial.
So when it comes to climate change, ditching the plow may not get our CO2 bank balances in the positive everywhere.
Instead, we need to diversify our income, use as many tools and techniques as we can to get more carbon into the ground, a process known as carbon sequestration.
It's not a thing.
We're also trying to work towards having living green plants in the soil for as long as possible, basically 12 months of the year. And everybody says, well, in wintertime, nothing's happening. Actually, there's still light that gets there. So even though it's slowed down, there's still active photosynthesis occurring at that time. So it's all about thinking differently. That soil is just that. It's soil. It's not an inert object that we merely place our seeds into. It's the furthest thing from dead. It's a collection of life. And we need to feed life. And in order to feed life, we need to do that with photosynthesis.
These guys that are telling them what they do don't say
Blake
nothing about
is on trend. Regenerative farming is taking hold around the world. One study found that the amount of land farmed using these techniques, no-till, low-till, cover crops, mixed planting, all this grew by almost 70% between 2009 and 2016.
How many acres of greenhouses are
The
there?
same study found that the likes of Blake are rare. The vast majority of land is still farmed traditionally.
Andrew fits into this traditional category. So the question is, how do we encourage farmers like Andrew to take up these kinds of practices?
Aside from a rubber mallet, I'm not quite sure what it takes to convince people to change. That's the fear in itself, right? The largest compaction zone found on most fields is found between the farmer's ears.
Andrew, how's that compaction between your ears? Is your mind expanding?
Yeah, the compaction between my ears is definitely expanding. That's a good line. I certainly don't want to give the impression that, farmers aren't environmentalists, but at the end of the day, these are businesses and we have families to feed. And so the dollar sign does lead so much down that path. So if I go home today after this conversation and say, okay, we're done, burn the plow, we're done. We're going to change how long before my
What does your
dirt
plow
looks like that, and I have 45 earthworms in a shovelful.
Before my soil entered before my
soil, yes, I keep saying the word dirt, and he keeps reminding me that it is not dirt, it is soil.
Before my soil looks like that, I think that we could get it really smoking within 3 years, 5 years. And when you look as a percentage of your career, it's a very small amount of time.
Do you have a 5-year plan for your veggie patch?
No, I don't, but I do have a 2-year
China
plan.
does.
I've been planting some asparagus and rhubarb, and they won't be ready until spring 2023.
All right, I'm putting that in my diary right now because I love fresh asparagus. Asmerit says the best way to get more farmers going no-till is to show them that it pays, either through higher yields, higher prices, or even subsidies.
And she says we need the soil to do more than ever, not just feed us, but help us mitigate climate change. And therein lies an important message, and it's one we grapple with pretty much every week on the show. The fact is that the climate is complex. It's not one thing, it's a system. For every action, there's a reaction. And that's why soil is just part of the picture.
We're not talking about soil alone being able to save us. As a human community, first and foremost, we need to reduce emissions of fossil fuels. Then we're going to have to figure out ways for negative emission or draw down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it into soil. And that's where I think soil makes a huge contribution.
What's caught your eye this week, Greya, in the climate news?
A story about dieting, and specifically the paleo diet. Have you heard of it?
Okay, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
Everything
people
on the
call
planet
it the caveman
dies,
diet, and it's
and
become
then you
hugely popular in
fall out of the
recent
trees
years.
that are
We
dying,
basically only
wandering
eat
around
foods
looking
that
for
our
food
hunter-gatherer ancestors
in a
ate.
world that is
So
flooding with
fruits,
meltwater.
veg, nuts, meat, fish, but not dairy, grains, or legumes. Anything that comes from farming is a big no-no.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, how
a
do you
new
think they
study
started
came out
farming
that
them?
looked at this diet's carbon and water footprint, along with things like cost and disease risk and whether it was a balanced diet or not. And then they compared it to other diets, like the Mediterranean diet. And they found that the paleo diet was more expensive, both for your wallet and for the climate, mostly because of the meat consumption associated with the diet, and meat is more energy intensive to produce than veggies, cereals, and legumes. But also animals like cows produce potent greenhouse gases.
Yeah, they
like
fart all
methane.
fucking
So, if you're looking for a climate-friendly diet, then maybe this isn't the one.
Maybe it's the one that should go extinct?
Yeah, perhaps. What's caught your eye this week?
Well, I thought that given that we basically had our head in the
cars
soil
running
all
around with
week, that
internal
we should
combustion engines.
talk about the
They
high
suck in
politics about
methane
what's going on right now.
from the atmosphere.
President Biden is hosting a big climate summit later this month, and he's scrambling to put together something to announce. Now, you'll remember that under Donald Trump, the U.S. basically opted out of any climate targets. Now, Mr. Biden wants to change that, so there's a lot of work going on across the U.S. government to come up with something that will show the U.S. is serious about reducing emissions. Bloomberg has a story that the U.S. is considering announcing an emission.
I have a feeling a lot more people are going to be paying attention to the COVID numbers in our situation tomorrow rather than that throne speech. In any event, we'll carry that live at 3 o'clock on BC1, and then you and I will be on as usual to chat about what we've learned.
As usual. All right. Thanks so much, Keith.
3 o'clock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One in every
now and then.
Those are the stories of the day today, Monday, April 12th, that are going to kick us off this morning. Are You Okay is next on the shift.
Canada's brightest conversation in the dark of night.
I thought you were going to ask us a question.
With Shane Hewitt.
Damn it.
Deep in dark despair. 911, what's your emergency?
Monday, April 19th on Global.
City content. So we are regurgitating.
Mix was done by Nigel Appleton.
I guess we're going with 50%. We're not doing that. Find a song.
Cream shampoo Luster Cream, world's finest shampoo. No other shampoo in the world gives you Kate Umat's magic blend of secret ingredients plus gentle lanolin. Not a soap.
So when you see a plant grow up out of the ground, that's misleading. It's growing down out of the sky. The carbon dioxide gets sucked into the plant, and that's how it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you throw all this, that's why I take all the grape stems and throw them in these planters and use those as dirt. That's all it is. It's soaking up carbon. So what? And that's what it has to do to make enough food, to make enough oxygen for me to breathe, and food. I'm not worried about carbon dioxide. Your body can't measure oxygen. You can measure carbon dioxide. I don't care about carbon dioxide. I care about oxygen. You guys got it all backwards. What about the carbon dioxide? Reduce the amount of nitrogen to keep the oxygen the same.
And now, once again, here is our Miss Brooks.
Well, after I found out the identity of Mr. Boynton's summer replacement on the train, I altered my plans for the weekend. Computing the wind velocity and the rate of speed at which we were traveling, I decided not to get off until the first stop. Then I took the next train back to town. And when I arrived at the depot, I ran right into Walter Denton.
Miss Brooks, what are you doing here? You should be halfway to Eagle Springs by now.
I was, Walter, but I found out that Mr. Boynton isn't going, and I couldn't bear the thought of letting him spend the weekend alone.
Alone? But Miss Brooks, Mr. Boynton got a last-minute cancellation and left for Eagle Springs 5 minutes ago.
What?
Sure, I drove him down.
Oh, great. Well, there's only one way.
Joseph Newberger, criminal defense lawyer. In life, you can face unexpected events, especially during stressful times. If you are facing a criminal charge, it is...
Attention, can you please walk me throughout the whole process of labor and delivery, not just the end, but the whole time?
I've been very fortunate to, access and to get the assistance during the times of the outbreak. With the addition of 10 midwives, very experienced midwives, and it was with the PAs over. It was quite tremendous help for us.
On behalf of UNFPA Pacific Sub-Regional Office, I'm saying a big thank you to the Fiji midwives for spending the last 10 weeks offering their service to not only to UNFPA but to the governments of
by the World Health Organization was dwarfed by the cost of re-stimulating economies that have suffered because of the pandemic. The Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has accused Israel of being behind Sunday's incident at the Natanz nuclear facility. Iranian officials have already described it as nuclear terrorism, while Israeli media have suggested that Israel most likely carried out a sabotage operation. Ahead of Myanmar's traditional New Year holiday, activists are calling for it to be used to express resistance to military rule. Online images show the symbolic poles of yellow flowers being refashioned with anti-coup messages. It's exactly 60 years today since the first human, the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, traveled into space. The pioneering flight intensified the Soviet Union space race with the United States. BBC News.
Hello and welcome to Business Daily from the BBC with me, Ivana Davidovich. In today's program, I look into the rising star of messaging apps, Telegram. After becoming the most downloaded non-gaming app earlier this year, are its privacy promises to users up to scratch?
When you're having a conversation, a normal conversation on Telegram, the Telegram staff members or whoever Telegram decides to hand over data to will be able to read your conversation.
Owned by the elusive Russian exile Pavel Durov, Telegram has been used to coordinate global protest movements from Belarus to Hong Kong. It's also been accused of tolerating the extremist channels behind ISIS and the Capitol Hill riots. But in its home country, Russia, rampant misogyny seems to be permitted on the platform and is putting women's lives in danger.
There were swear words and messages. They wanted to tie my child and me to a horse and let the horse on the road.
That's all in Business Daily from the BBC.
You know, when I saw a photo of him from the orphanage, he was dressed in such, ridiculous clothes. A nursery hat that absolutely did not suit him.
Ekaterina Frolova is a hairdresser from Kamchatka. the volcano-rich peninsula in the far east of Russia. As her daughter was all grown up, she returned to the long-held desire to adopt. She described to me the moment she knew she'd found her son.
Hold on. That's not the interesting part of your
I saw
story.
instantly that this boy should not remain in the system. He would never be understood there. I needed to get him out of there and give him love. I can't explain what happened, but after seeing this
At the same price as the cigarette you're now smoking. Remember, thousands of Americans are switching to Fatima. Insist on Fatima quality. So why wait? Switch to Fatima today. Look for the sunny yellow pack. Buy Fatima. Best of all, king-size cigarettes.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case transcribed from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
Crime to punishment.
It was Tuesday, February 18th. It was cold in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch out of homicide detail. My partner's Ben Romero. The boss is Thad Brown, chief of detectives. My name's Friday. It was 10:43 a.m. when we got to Woodview High School, the vice principal's office. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes.
I'd like to see the vice
We're not
principal,
detectives,
please. Her
we're
name is
military
Harmon.
police.
Miss Harmon?
We don't
I'm Miss Harmon. What did you want?
Police officers, ma'am. Is our identification.
Oh, yes.
This is my partner, Sergeant Romero. My name's Friday.
I see. How do you do?
Well, we'd like to talk to one of your girl students, Miss Harmon, Roberta Dixon. Understand she's registered here.
Roberta Dixon. Oh, yes, I believe I know her.
Would you mind calling her out of class, please? We'd like to talk to her.
Well, we generally don't like to do that, officer, not unless it's absolutely necessary.
Pretty important, ma'am. We've got a message for the girl.
I see. Couldn't it wait until after school hours?
I'm afraid not, Miss Harmon. It's about the girl's mother. It's pretty serious.
Oh, has she been taken ill, is that it?
No, ma'am. She's been murdered. 16-year-old Roberta Dixon, the daughter of the murdered woman, was called out of her classroom and brought downstairs to the office of Miss Harmon, the girl's vice principal. She was a thin, dark-haired girl in sweater and skirt. With the help of Miss Harmon, whom the girl seemed to know fairly well, Ben and I broke the news of her mother's death as gently as we could. At first, the 16-year-old girl seemed to take the shock with some composure, but suddenly she broke down weeping and became hysterical. When she recovered sufficiently, the girl agreed to come downtown with us to answer a few routine questions. Miss Harmon agreed to accompany her. 11:05 a.m. We checked back in at the office. Ben and I completed the 311 dead body report while Miss Harmon and the daughter of the murdered woman waited in the adjoining room.
Are you
What
serious?
was that time discovered, Joe? You got a note on it there? Yeah, let me look. 8:55 a.m. Oh, thanks.
I gotta call 311
Hi, Joe.
and report a 311.
Oh, hi, George. How
right?
you doing? I can't complain. Got some checking out to do. I wonder if you'd help me. Well, I'll give it a try. Ben, you know George DeCover, reporter from the Daily News. Oh, yeah, sure. Sam Moran. Hi. So I understand you two are working on that knife murder out on Pico, the dead woman they found this morning? Yeah, that's right. A few things I'd like to check with you before I do the story. The victim's name was Florence Eleanor Dixon, that right? That's right, George. Yeah. A couple more things here. Stop me if I got it wrong. The victim was 40 years old, divorced, one child, daughter 16. Body was discovered 9 o'clock this morning by a next-door neighbor. See, neighbor.
I don't know what I'm trying to do, but I can't handle that. And this takes about 20 minutes, so. What happened if I press this? No, that's not good. CTV Montreal. Montrealers flock outside, but many seem unaware of new mask rules. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention this one. U.S. taxi services see business boost helping Canadians avoid hotel quarantine. So if you're a citizen, they can't turn you away at the border. If you land in the U.S., get in a cab, drive to the border, just drive to the border, I guess, walk across, whatever the fuck you want. Get another cab in Windsor or Winnipeg or whatever it is, right? China hits Alibaba with record $2.8 billion fine for for behaving like a monopoly. Who's this guy here? There's a picture of a guy. Alibaba's a company. Is this guy Alibaba? If I go look at this website and that guy's picture isn't there, I'll be upset. Young woman missing in Montreal. Police asking for public's help to find her, I guess. Ever given ship forbidden to leave the Suez Canal until its owners pay up to $1 billion in compensation for the chaos it ... wreaked. So there's like there's like a cohort of cab drivers who are getting their milk money, taking Canadians back from U.S. airports to the border. So it doesn't matter if the trip makes sense normally. Right now, they need to go from the international airport to the land crossing. Right. Okay. Who's prepared to do that? Mr. Cab Driver. Uber will charge you like $1,400. Okay, just about good coincidence. One of my bookmarks. Politicians confirmed to have left Alberta for warmer, blah 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 places. It's only a couple months old. Albertan politicians, while everybody's on lockdown, going on. You should all stay home. Fuck. So I swear somebody's trying to dumb me.
Say, hey, now, come on, y'all. If it's money in your pocket and you walk it tall, make your way to the bar, get your poison show, drink it old school style, and you be boy, I get off. Bad flows like a pot on y'all. If it's money in your pocket and you walk it tall, make your way to the bar, get your poison show, drink it old school style, and you walk it tall. Make your way to the bar, get your poison shows, drink it old school style, and you be boy pose. I'm Danny Boy with the hardcore style. I put suckers in the mouth like a root canal. You get me started and I'm hard to stop. I got 45 calibers ready to pop. And when I pop off, you drop off, you get thrown out the frame. The more shit change, the more things stay the same. And I got no respect for your area from Brooklyn to Dublin. Now keep your ass fumbling, cause I'm the fucking ball buster. Brooklyn heartbreaker. House of paint, pimp, money maker. Say, hey, now, come on, y'all. If it's money in your pocket and you walking tall, make your way to the bar, get your poison show, drink it old school style in your b-boy pose. Hey, now, come on, y'all. If there's money in your pocket and you walking tall. Run up if you want to get
This idiot won't fucking start. He sees me light a joint.
Kill you all just like I was smallpox. Kill your livestock like I was anthrax. Come see me live and crazy's how the band say, hey, now, come on, y'all. Hey, now, come on, y'all. If there's money in your pocket and you walking tall, make your way to the bar, get your poison shows, and drink it old school style in your b-boy pose.
What the fuck is the purpose of what you're fucking doing? What is the end result? I light a joint, you shit your pants. Wow, why are you watching this, bro? You hate this so much, you watch 24 fucking 7. Fuck off.
Pure sugar. It's as good as it sounds.
Well, if Jesus is in the mix, I make moves like the Knicks and take it straight up the lane. I block out the frame, then I praise it. Believes it, you need to like heroin. Before you get your fight or get your steroid. Here come the Don Dada, making ghettos red hotter. I drop the boom bada like Jake LaMotta. I can single you out and isolate you like mono. Talk what you talk, still you don't know what I know. Some pay for ass, some pay for cash.
Non-stop. I don't like that, and I'm going to let you know. So what?
It's going down rough like swallowing teeth. I say word to Thin Lizzy. Kid, I get busy and I knock all of y'all off this wonder wall. Cause on a daily basis,
I've literally lit it twice. Still have not broke the fucking tip of my phone. I cannot get in there. Bullshit.
Observe the technician in finite vision. You highlight reels, or lace my drug deals as you scheme to check bills on chicks.
You get up to them on their connections. I want to say, we know. There's 8 fucking months of recordings of this. What are you proving, dumbass? We've been doing this for, what, 6 hours today. Every time I do something you don't fucking like it, you're gonna stop. You're never gonna stop shit, bro. You're a fucking meth head pedophile. Fuck off and die.
Some do the knowledge, some do the math. Some pay for ass, some pay for cash. Some do the knowledge, some do the math. Some stick to the road, some straight from the path. Some do the knowledge.
Oh, you're gone now? You didn't realize who your friends are? Whoever the fuck you are doing this shit, you're fucking retarded. You're cruising what fucking message boards to find this shit? Especially on the pedophile watch list, dumbass. You can't buy that software legally, right? And you think Anonymous is going to help you somehow. You're fucking stupid. It's unstable. Fucking. This is their level of thinking of themselves as a hacker, is to just dump data to such an extent they can't send it to 2 devices at the same time. You're so skilled. It took 3 months for them to believe I can hear the fucking audio cutout. Every fucking day, they did 12 or 14.
He could be the most successful rap star in America. His first album sold 4 million copies, but lately Snoop Doggy Dogg spending more time in the criminal court building than in the recording studio.
There has been no shortage of controversy for rapper Snoop Doggy Dogg, and his followers call the dog to say they're trying to present a positive image in negative times.
Meantime, prosecutors say, so they are not
Drop murder charges against Snoop Doggy Dogg.
This is dedicated to the niggas who said gangster rap was dead. Fuck y'all.
Nicorette Quick Miss gets to work on your cravings in just...
Or try it if it works for you. It's nothing. Like what? You can see me smoking, eh? You know.
And she wants to jump in. Bring a friend. Everybody's like, Papa, baby, come on in. Come on in and bring a friend and you can come on back. Cause when you do, we gon' be sipping on some cognac. It's on me. I'm feeling good tonight. Cause I'm gonna do mine and I'm gonna keep everything tight. I ain't letting nothing leak, cause if things leaking, I'm gonna get caught. And I can't get caught, cause you know how they do about that child support. Shit, bitches is cold on nigga who ain't got his game tight. Getting 18.5% half your life. Shit, I love my baby boy and all, but I ain't gonna be playing no bitch. No way, dog, no way. Too slick on my toes, I'm too tight. I'm giving cheese to get away, instead ain't that right? When you playing this game, you got to be the real player. You can't be that fake ass nigga talking about you want to be the main. Cause if you ain't with the game ain't gonna be with you. And I can put that on everything, including you. Blind every 5 black males before the year 2000 will be detained or deceased. No justice, no peace. Yeah, the truth hurts. Be scared, go to church.
Racist, prejudiced, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever the fuck you are. You don't make any fucking sense. And yes, the whole thank you. And again, more pictures of me with my eyes clamped. So I'll put it up if you want.
hit makers, you know what I'm saying? Love makers now, cause now they got shackled me. It's time to make $1 million, and that's for real. See, we gon' blow up and show up and wait till we come through. Until we do, just keep slowly gray and blue. Or whatever.
Drug stable. Reconnect the drug stable. Reconnect. Listen, you know. You're hitting every single port you can think of over and over and over and over.
Get up on gang, they don't wanna be down with the PG. All of a sudden, everybody wanna diss deep in this deep minute. What we look like? Letting y'all diss us. That ain't right. I should get upset, but I'm gonna stay composed. Chill for a second. Spit at some hoes. Drinking my drink, smoking my dank. Keep it, and now this ain't no motherfucker.
So I tried loading the video like 6 fucking times. All 6 times is a picture of me all fucked up with my eyes closed. Yeah, it's hilarious. But what does that mean? My eyes being closed means what? What does it mean?
Joe B. Wells was known for robbing trains and things, bringing everybody down for diamond rings and chains. It remains the same in the year you live in. Cause if I pull out some heat, nigga, you gon' kick in. And that's just the road set by the fool from the old school. When it's time to do, you get 2 men, 2 leaders, 1 street, 1 clock. And when it's like 12, one of y'all gon' drop. If you quick on the draw, you gon' see them all. But if you too slow, I catch you on the down low. You mean they kill? Shit's real. Kingdom John Wayne, these niggas gangbang. The 4 horsemen, that's the clique I'm with. You mean the little bitty niggas with the itchy trigger fingers? We on the mission to Kansas, slipping through Texas. We stopped at Bonanza to get us some hot cakes, bacon and eggs. Then we slid in the whole house to get us some leg. Hop back on the horses, and horses, of course, it's the niggas in black, the fillers for horsemen, searching for this location on the map. The gold rush, baby, got to have it, just like it's 1865, and the trigger like a day is how I ride. Yeah. On, it's no strange. Time to hit you with range, quick with the heat on it. Young Jesse James, can you test your aim? I seen you the wild in the corral. I heard that you had to falsify. Nigga, you ain't never lied. Besides, I'm in the mood, so I knew we ride. Coast to coast, niggas smash on every stage coach. My sight with the rifle, lethal with a whole post. Off the rock, a roller coaster. On the 6-shooter holster with EPG on every one poster. Let me think about which bank to get, which fella to shoot and which teller to shake. I want all the shit you got in stacks attached to the skirts is drawn down more. Nowadays we're drawn down more. You survive the all around war. So battle up or saddle up and shake the scene, or get your pocket shaking, clean slugs in your clean. I can't help it. I'm heartless, you can't hack it. On my 6 shoes, through my hips and dusty jackets like that. Top back, look to pull my strap, just to put the horseman on the map.
Boys off style individuals. James got the hots. I got 6 shots for all the plans and plots. I got lots. A cash stack, the money bags, worthy workers for the Russian blabber mouths and gags. I got stacks. So my stacks excel. Hop in the coach with my 12 Clydesdales and bells. I'm on the move. Smooth to my decoy horse. A 30-30 on my side to shoot a nigga. Of course, it ain't no stopping young Josie. Box all the nosy. Headed to the saloon with my platoon, all the hosey. Left the dusty trail. Bell did swell. Gold spurs on the gate and set back the clientele. Oh well. For the recop, I brought my bet. Divide between my homies and ride the sunset. 2 sacks of money from the train heist. Ain't even counting it up. Just mounting it up. Real west toward the coast. The 6 shooters in the holster. Pass through and run downtown. Whose walls hold my poster. Closer, I get to depth with you. Cause every second makes me sweat, so I gotta have what I can get. Heard a word about the gold rush, and headed west on my white horse seat with 3 straps in my knapsack. City up, the next town I rode through, I had to threaten to blow the city up. First heads with you, black hawks 5 miles west, selling some beats and selling some weed. He offered me a stroke, he didn't have a joint, he had that beat like smoke. I'm on choke, grateful for the kid right, I'm walking to the sunset, trying to reach my destiny fast. This is 2 bags of cash. Post high, I ain't making no more stops till I hit the spot. I made it 12 on the dot. I Slid off my coupe, counted my loot. 5 minutes after the strike of midnight, I counted 200 G's and caught my breath and slept light. Go.
I think that runs for another minute.
And carefully curated for that one special moment. Schneider's Snack Kits. Quality never gets old.
The doctor's so mean. They look like they tried to tear him off. I said, oh my God, they want to leave my husband.
I was sitting at home, about to eat dinner. Had a hard day at the studio, was getting thinner. My nigga Spanky Dog was playing basketball. And my niggas in the backyard about to squad my dogs. Dirty ready, it's crazy. It's a good scheme, but you know, it's on the part of the Coleon team. I squat, fight, cause that's what I do. Dog pound for life, nigga. I thought you knew what you did. You think I'm hitting, nigga, my dog scrap. They get down for this, bring him right to the back. Hit the gate, don't wait, and ask the homie that he got a pit named Slimy. Mobbing behind him, now he said that he got Michael Coleon. Oh, corrupt, he got only the psycho assassin. He likes to smash him. And ain't no need to reach for heat, cause you can't get your glass on. Dogs we keep them, busters we sweep them. And when it's time on my dogs to fight your mama, I leave you niggas on stuck at pause. And I'm gonna dedicate this one to my dogs. Remember that nigga, the one I had named Petey? She got killed, so I didn't need it. It's like that, what about Swiss? He got killed, so I didn't need it. It's a cold thing, but it's a cold game. But when you wear the Coleon name, it's a cold thing. Cold name, cold game, you got to get down. Cause if you don't think you can't represent them, now it's like a sport. And if I get caught, I'm right back in court. So I got to keep it on the DL and don't detail. But you know I got the pin board for C-sale. So if you want to get one, holla at your boy quick. Cause I'ma be on the lookout for the seller and pigs. Ask my little homie technique. I gave Scarface, call me Young Killer's baby boy. OG the homie training, I gave him Roxy. But the rest of the piss, they rollin' with me. We layin' low in the cut, posted up in Chino. Scrappy Dude and the crew pulled together. And that bitch is a chick. I had to get coffee to get the bitch up off me. And I can't blame her, and I can't blame her. That's why I had to name her the top dog.
You buy L&M filters. This is it. L&M is best. Stands out from all the rest. Around Dodge City and
It's too late. We get news off this. We're not gonna get anything. Nice. This work.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour et bienvenue dans cette émission de la vie au quotidien au Capi Service. C'est un plaisir de vous retrouver encore aujourd'hui pour vous servir. Merci d'être branchés sur la fréquence et la paix. Que dit la loi congolaise à propos de la séparation des pouvoirs? On en parle dans cette émission avec Maître Charles Mouchizi, avocat barreau.
Modified Monday, March 29th, 2021. Why? Didn't modify this page ever before.
parler de la désintégration des familles, comment faire face à cette situation. Nous allons recevoir dans cette émission Monsieur Emmanuel Binyamunganga, coordonnateur de la Ligue des familles congolaises en Belgique. Norbert Lopiti, spécialiste de l'enfance marginalisée, sera également de la partie des questions et préoccupations. Composez le 081 890 63 94. Polydor Bansunga assure la mise en onde. Tati Mapoukou assure la coordination et la réalisation de cette émission qui présente Jody Daniel Kachama. Bienvenue à tous.
Les dialogues entre Congolais. Les débats politiques, c'est dans le dialogue entre Congolais. Tous les jours, acteurs politiques, décideurs sociaux et journalistes informent, expliquent et débattent de l'actualité au quotidien sur nos antennes, mais jamais sans vous. Car dialogue entre Congolais, c'est aussi vos questions et vos réactions. Dialogue entre Congolais, de lundi à jeudi, de 19h15 à 20h et sur Internet, sur www.radiocapi.net.
Que dit la loi congolaise à propos de la séparation des pouvoirs? Eh bien, la théorie de la séparation des pouvoirs, principe cher à Montesquieu, constitue de nos jours un modèle moderne et démocratique de gouvernance. Elle organise trois pouvoirs, à savoir le législatif, l'exécutif et les judiciaires. Cependant, ce principe de séparation des pouvoirs demeure un mythe pour certains. Dans la pratique, le pouvoir exécutif a toujours de l'ascendance prédomine sur les autres pouvoirs. Alors, quelles sont les dispositions de la Constitution à propos de la séparation du pouvoir? Que faire pour une séparation effective de ces trois pouvoirs? Eh bien, c'est de cela que nous parlons, que nous allons parler aujourd'hui dans Okapi Service, qui dit la loi congolaise à propos de la séparation des pouvoirs. Maître Charles Mouchizi, vous êtes à
Can I get something audio? Damn it. This is not that helpful. That disappoints me. In the Congo, they have blocks of high-rise buildings too. Okay, but that's not what I'm looking for at all. Why can't I just go to where the news is, where I can play it and hear it? You don't want us to have it. Damn it. Swahili, Chiluba, Lingala, and Kikongo, but not French. Why? What happens? What the fuck happened? Oh, this one. How do I get around this? How do I? It's not gonna work, and I'm gonna try something different. Fuck it. I wanted to hear Dragnet anyway. Really. Fuck this diplomat. Oh, here we go. What do I have? Fresh news. It's not even an hour old. Okay. I think just 12. Yeah.
Radio Capi.
Distributing plants to schools. That's what I was trying to do.
Manifestation anti-MONUSCO l'évêque du diocèse Benguitembo demande l'intervention urgente des dirigeants congolais pour le retour de la paix dans cette région. Justement, le gouvernement congolais annonce des actions concrètes pour éradiquer l'insécurité dans l'est du pays. C'est ce qu'a dit le vice-premier ministre en charge de l'Intérieur, Gilbert Kankonde, notre invité ce matin. Et bientôt la reprise des travaux de réhabilitation du pont route rail Douala jeté sur le fleuve Congo à Congo dans le Tanganyika. Annonce faite par la Société nationale de chemin de fer du Congo, SNCC. Ces travaux ont été suspendus depuis 10 mois, faute de moyens, explique la SNCC. Madame, Messieurs, bonjour. L'évêque du diocèse Béni Boutembo interpelle les dirigeants congolais à s'impliquer urgemment en vue de la reconstruction de la paix dans le Grand Nord du Nord Kivu. Monseigneur SICKLY a lancé ce message hier lors d'une messe qu'il a dite à Boutembo. D'après lui, la miséricorde n'est pas seulement le pardon, mais également la compassion qui saisit la personne au plus profond de son être devant toutes sortes de misères. Monseigneur SICKLY dans cet extrait de son homélie choisi par Alicia Kapisa.
Je dénonce toutes les structures nationales et internationales qui manipulent certains acteurs politiques et certains groupes dits de pression pour rendre cette région ingouvernable. Continuons à lutter par le moyen pacifique pour que cesse cette situation dramatique que nous subissons depuis 7 ans. Par des moyens reconnus par la Constitution, éveillons la conscience de tous les Congolais afin qu'ils sortent de leur léthargie et interpellons tous les dirigeants de la base au sommet de l'État afin qu'ils prennent des mesures urgentes et adéquates pour mettre fin aux souffrances insupportables d'une population abandonnée, sinon sacrifiée, et nul ne sait pour quel intérêt.
Rappelons qu'au cours de cette messe, l'ordinaire du lieu a appelé les uns et les autres à s'approprier le message du comité permanent de la SENCO intitulé, je cite, « Arrêtez de tuer vos frères, le sang de ton frère crie vers moi du sol ». Fin de citation. Restons à Boutembo. Une semaine après le début des manifestations anti-MONUSCO, initiées par certains groupes de pression, une controverse règne actuellement autour de la levée de la mesure de 10 jours sans activité. Dans une déclaration à la presse samedi, certaines associations et organisations qui ont décrété ces journées villes mortes annoncent indirectement la reprise normale des activités aujourd'hui 12 avril, tout en annonçant une série d'autres actions pour, souligne-t-elle, exiger le départ de la MONUSCO. L'autorité urbaine, elle, invite toute la population à vaquer librement à ses occupations à partir d'aujourd'hui. Grâce à Hamza qui nous en dit plus.
Sans être clair et précis sur la reprise normale des activités ce lundi, le communicateur des associations et mouvements citoyens a fixé l'opinion sur les nouvelles actions à entreprendre afin de poursuivre la lutte pour la paix à Beni et à Ituri. Parfait Mouhani a annoncé dès ce lundi le début de la campagne de désobéissance fiscale. Il a aussi indiqué qu'il y aura désormais toutes les semaines jeudi sans activité et bien d'autres actions citoyennes. En revanche, d'autres structures, notamment les mouvements anti-gang et Lucha, appellent, elles, clairement aux journées villes mortes qui doivent se poursuivre jusqu'au 15 avril. Pour sa part, le maire de la ville de Boutembo appelle toute la population à reprendre ses activités ainsi que les écoles à rouvrir leurs portes ce lundi. Sylvain Kanyamanda met ainsi en garde tous ceux qui troubleraient l'ordre public au risque de subir la rigueur de la loi. Boutembo, grâce à Mouzati, Radio Kapi.
En Ituri, 2 personnes sont mortes asphyxiées samedi dans un carré minier à Pluto, environ 7 km de Mongwalou, dans le territoire de Djougou. Le bourgmestre de cette commune rurale précise que 3 autres personnes s'en sont tirées avec des graves blessures après avoir été sauvées et réanimées. Jean Bikilisende demande aux exploitants miniers de veiller sur la sécurité de leur personnel. Le bourgmestre de Mongwalou, joint par Charlie Omba.
Pendant qu'il y avait de la fumée, du moteur, ainsi de suite, 5 qui étaient touchés par l'asphyxie, qui avaient plus d'oxygène. On a réussi à les dégager à la surface. 3 personnes ont été réanimées, ils ont repris, et il y a eu 2 personnes qui en sont mortes. Ce que nous demandons à la population, c'est que, bien sûr, tous nous devons travailler pour gagner notre pain quotidien. Mais pendant que nous travaillons sur l'exploitation minière artisanale, nous entrons dans le puits profond, nous devons pomper de l'eau avec des engins, nous devons prendre des précautions. Quand le moteur est en train de tourner, ça bouffe l'oxygène de l'environnement en place. Donc nous devons faire attention. Chaque fois que nous travaillons, nous devons d'abord attendre nous devons être regardants vis-à-vis de notre propre sécurité.
Province du Tanganyika, la Société nationale des chemins de fer du Congo, SNCC à Congolo, annonce la reprise des travaux de réhabilitation du pont route rail Lualaba, jeté sur le fleuve Congo. Nous sommes à 390 km au nord-ouest de Kalemi. Le directeur d'infrastructure et des experts de la SNCC sont arrivés sur place pour la supervision des travaux. Le pont Lualaba est un ouvrage qui permet de relier la province du Tanganyika à celle du Maniema par voie ferrée. Le coût n'est pas divulgué. François-Xavier Mibé, reportage.
C'est le stockage des matériaux de construction à l'entrepôt de l'Office de route par la SNCC qui rassure la reprise définitive des travaux. Une reprise qui intervient après un arrêt de 10 mois. Les travaux de réhabilitation entamés par l'Office des routes ont été suspendus en mai 2020, faute de fonds. Le directeur d'infrastructure ferroviaire de la SNCC, Kachota Mutombo. Nous venons reprendre les travaux dans le cadre de la SNCC. Nous allons poser des planches comme il faut. Le passage va être bloqué de 8 à 16h30, voire 17h. Le travail ira vite. Le pont route Lualaba de Congolo est un ouvrage qui relie le Tanganyika au Maniema. Il permet le transport des personnes et l'évacuation des marchandises de Kindu en passant par Congolo à Lubumbashi d'une part et de Kindu à Kalemi d'autre part. L'administrateur de territoire assistant en charge de l'administration, Joseph Kiteba. Le directeur d'infrastructure ferroviaire confirme la fin des travaux dans un mois.
Gardons patience, c'est confirmé pour le moment.
Les experts sont déjà dans le mur.
Ça commence de moment à l'autre.
Kalemi, François-Xavier Mibé, Radio Kapi.
Parlons à présent des routes nationales numéro 2, 3 et 5 autour de la ville de Bukavu, au sud Kivu. Dans un point de presse hier à Kinshasa, l'élu de Walungu a demandé au chef de l'État d'inclure dans son projet Chile-Djoulou la réhabilitation de ces routes d'interconnexion provinciale et régionale. Dans le cas contraire, prévient le député national Olive Mudekereza, les villes de Bukavu et Uvira seront en rupture d'approvisionnement en produits de première nécessité et le sud Kivu sera isolé d'autres provinces. Olive Mudekereza l'a dit à Jean-Désiré Kanyama.
On a saisi le cabinet du chef de l'État pour la route RN5. C'est dans le cadre de l'urgence parce que la route est déjà coupée entre Uvira et Bukavu. C'est une route de grande importance. Et vous savez que la ville de Bukavu est au carrefour de ces trois routes nationales, la RN2, la RN3 et la RN5. Si ces routes sont coupées, la ville de Bukavu sera asphyxiée et il n'y aura plus d'interconnexion entre cette province et les autres pays voisins. Quand vous allez à Goma, au niveau de Niabibwe, à 100 km de la ville de Bukavu, la route est presque coupée, là où on dit chez les Français. Quand vous parlez de la route RND pour aller vers Chabunda, à environ à 80 km, 70 km, c'est inaccessible. Donc, la ville de Bukavu est presque coupée de ces territoires. Ça a des conséquences énormes sur l'économie. Et nous demandons au chef de l'État de voir, d'examiner dans l'urgence la possibilité d'intégrer ces routes dans son projet de Chile-Djoulou. En réhabilitant, en construisant, pourquoi pas même asphalter la route de Gomo. Si on ne le fait pas, le sud Kivu sera coupé des autres provinces et de ces territoires et de l'interconnexion régionale. Et vous savez, d'ici une année, 2 à 3 ans, nous entrons dans la zone libre d'échange.
Dans l'actualité aussi, l'arrestation depuis environ 5 jours du commandant de l'aéroport international de Bangoka, Léonard Muyaga Kizito, croupi dans la prison centrale de Kisangani, suite à une plainte déposée au parquet de grande instance par une délégation de la RVA Kinshasa. Cette dernière l'accuse de détournement des biens et autres dons légués par la MONUSCO à cette entreprise. Pendant ce temps, le conseil de Léonard Muyaga se bat pour obtenir sa liberté provisoire. Plus de détails avec Jacques Moukonkole.
Outre les dons et legs de la MONUSCO, la délégation de la RVA doit également enquêter sur la disparition d'autres matériels de la RVA hérités du projet prioritaire de la santé aérienne. Tous ceux qui seraient impliqués dans ce détournement doivent être poursuivis, avait indiqué Théongala Mouloumé, chef de cette délégation, lorsqu'il est allé présenter ses civilités et l'objet de leur mission à l'autorité provinciale. Dans les milieux proches du commandant de l'aéroport international de Bangoka, l'on dénonce la précipitation avec laquelle un haut cadre de la RVA, de surcroît, représentant du directeur général, peut être incarcéré à la prison comme si sa fuite était à craindre. D'ailleurs, estime ses proches, sa responsabilité dans ce qui lui est reproché n'est pas encore établie par les instances judiciaires compétentes. Ils renchérissent que le dossier étant administratif, la délégation n'a qu'à établir un rapport à la hiérarchie. L'incriminé doit pour sa part donner les moyens de défense avant que la justice ne soit saisie pour établir ou non les griefs mis à sa charge. Pour le moment, le conseil de Léonard Muyanga-Kizito, commandant de l'aéroport de Bamboka, sollicite la liberté provisoire de leur client en instance de prendre sa retraite après plus de 40 ans de service rendu dans cette entreprise. Jacques Mkonkole, Kisangani, Radio Kapi.
Direction le Maniema, distribution gratuite de 1000 plantules dans 7 écoles de la ville de Kindu. Cette opération est lancée par la synergie Acte Vert. Parmi ces écoles, les instituts Djoudi et Saint-Charles, ainsi que l'école primaire Nyota, les premiers à être servis. L'objectif, selon le coordonnateur de cette synergie, est de protéger ces écoles contre les vents violents qui détruisent leurs toitures, mais aussi protéger l'environnement de la ville. L'ingénieur Hassan Emili Modjon explique dans ses propos recueillis par Florence Kizalunga.
Nous nous trouvons auprès de notre pépinière en train de distribuer les arbres. Parce que nous avons des espèces d'arbres. Et nous avons les Lessènes, l'écocéphale, nous avons Acacia mangium que nous allons donner aux écoles afin que nos écoles aussi soient protégées. Parce que vous savez, avec les intempéries, avec les ouragans, ça prenne les toitures de nos écoles. Alors nous ne pouvons pas seulement commencer à protéger la forêt, alors qu'il y a des écoles aussi qui souffrent. Vous savez que nous sommes les protecteurs de l'environnement et acteurs de développement. Quand vous trouvez il y a un problème, vous devez savoir chercher une petite solution. Parce qu'on ne peut pas attendre une solution qui peut provenir d'ailleurs alors que vous-même vous êtes la solution d'un problème. Parce que ça ne demande pas un moyen exorbitant, ça demande seulement la technicité, le professionnalisme et le dévouement. On ne fait pas vendre cette pépinière ou ces arbres aux écoles, nous leur donnons gratuitement. Et nous avions dit aux chefs des établissements que nous allons faire le suivi d'un mois pour bien fixer ces arbres, afin que ça croisse de manière très ordonnée là et que ça crée des ombrages comme les enfants les connaissent, mais nous l'appelons climax. C'est ce que nous sommes en train de chercher.
Actualité, Afrique monte.
Les Béninois étaient appelés hier aux urnes pour le premier tour d'une élection présidentielle déjà contestée. Seuls 3 candidats étaient en lice, dont le président actuel Patrice Talon. De son côté, l'opposition a vu plusieurs de ses candidatures invalidées par la commission électorale. Le vote s'est déroulé dans le calme, notamment à Cotonou, la capitale économique du Bénin. Présidentielle au Tchad, 7,3 millions d'électeurs étaient appelés aux urnes hier également pour départager 10 candidats, parmi lesquels l'actuel chef de l'État Idriss Déby, qui brigue un nouveau mandat de 6 ans. Dans la capitale comme en province, il n'y avait pas foule devant les bureaux de vote. Allemagne, qui pour succéder à Angela Merkel, à moins de 6 mois des élections, les partis allemands se mettent en ordre de marche, mais à droite, l'incertitude demeure. Les conservateurs doivent encore décider qui sera leur candidat dans la course à la chancellerie. Les 2 présidents des partis de droite sont sur les rangs. La pression monte pour que la question soit tranchée. Les groupes parlementaires des 2 partis se sont réunis hier en conclave avec la sortante Angela Merkel et les 2 candidats potentiels. Notez que la chancelière allemande Angela Merkel quittera le pouvoir durant l'automne après 16 ans à la chancellerie.
L'invité.
Les cris de détresse lancés par la jeunesse et toutes les franges des populations dans l'est de la RDC ont été entendus par le gouvernement. Ce dernier annonce ainsi des actions concrètes pour éradiquer l'insécurité dans cette partie du pays. Déclaration du vice-premier ministre et ministre de l'Intérieur, Gilbert Kankonde dénonce la propagation des images et informations des manipulations de la population par l'ennemi dans le but de déstabiliser et démoraliser les Congolais. Gilbert Kankonde, notre invité ce matin, répond aux questions de Jack Congol.
Monsieur le vice-premier ministre, Gilbert Kankonde, bonjour.
Bonjour.
La situation sécuritaire en effet qu'empirée dans l'est de la RDC. Ça fait près d'une semaine qu'il y a des jeunes qui manifestent contre les organisations internationales, contre la MONUSCO, suite aux violences, aux atrocités, aux massacres auxquels on assiste. C'est devenu récurrent, des maisons qui sont incendiées, mais on n'entend pas une voix de la part des autorités compétentes que vous êtes, les autorités gouvernementales qui ont la charge de la sécurité intérieure, de la protection des personnes et de leurs biens. Qu'en pensez-vous?
Ce sont des cris qui sont légitimes et qui arrivent effectivement aux oreilles des autorités. Lesquelles les autorités, depuis l'investiture du président de la République dans ses fonctions, a fait de cette question une de ses priorités. Et nous exprimons toute notre compassion par rapport à tous ces cris de détresse. Et je tiens à dire que les autorités ne sont pas restées insensibles. Par contre, chaque jour, ces questions reviennent dans les quotidiens dans les solutions à apporter et ne vous en faites pas. L'autorité utilise le gros des petits moyens dont dispose la République pour trouver des solutions à cette situation qui n'a fait que trop durer. Vous savez qu'il y a eu toute une brigade qui a été formée et qui a été déployée, notamment dans les Grands Nord, à Bénin, et qui avait réussi à déloger les ADF dans tous leurs quartiers généraux, dans leurs centres d'entraînement, et ce qui augurait pour nous un avenir de paix, effectivement. Mais ce que je voudrais dire haut et fort ici, ce sont les messages qui sont véhiculés pour accompagner ces cris de détresse. Et dans cette guerre atypique, l'ennemi utilise tous les moyens à sa disposition sur tous les fronts. Qu'est-ce qu'il fait? Il sème la terreur, notamment en s'en prenant à des paisibles citoyens qui sont isolés, qui sont dans leurs champs, qui sont dans des villages où dès qu'ils ont perpétré leurs actes criminels, eh bien, ils les filment eux-mêmes, ils les diffusent tout simplement pour choquer, pour inculquer, n'est-ce pas, ces images de terreur dans l'imaginaire, dans l'esprit de nos populations.
C'est parce que l'État apparemment n'existe pas là-bas. Il y a l'absence du gouvernement là-bas, l'absence de l'autorité de l'État.
Je ne veux pas revenir là-dessus, parce qu'en même temps, allez parcourir vous aussi les informations que vous avez eues à exploiter ces derniers temps. Vous découvrirez des images, des informations venant des forces armées congolaises sur des localités où des ADF s'étaient déjà établis et qui ont été repris et qui sont revenus, qui sont sécurisés par nos forces de défense et de sécurité. Mais les messages que véhiculent tous ceux qui se disent jeunes, société civile, c'est lesquels? C'est de dire qu'on continue à nous tuer et que l'État ne fait rien. Tous ceux qui sont comme partenaires MONUSCO, humanitaires, tout ça, leurs actions, c'est zéro. Et qu'est-ce qu'ils proposent comme alternative?
Mais vous, qu'est-ce que vous posez comme alternative, monsieur le ministre?
Ces messages-là, il faut que nous puissions les analyser pour savoir si c'est cela l'alternative.
Cela fait plusieurs années que cette situation perdure dans l'Est du pays. Les gens crient toujours, ils demandent qu'il y ait la paix. Ils demandent qu'il y ait l'autorité de l'État dans l'Est. Mais qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fait pour que cela cesse, pour qu'il y ait une paix durable?
Je vous ai expliqué, non seulement qu'il y a eu des actions, des offensives militaires qui ont été menées et qui ont réussi à faire reculer cette présence des ennemis.
Donc l'ennemi recule, mais il retourne toujours.
Mais c'est normal.
Qu'il appuie, il retourne. Pourquoi ne pas l'écraser définitivement?
Mais nous le faisons. Et là, déjà, c'est une réponse pour dire que rien n'est fait. Je vous démontre qu'il y a quelque chose qui est fait.
Parmi les actions pour éradiquer ces phénomènes d'insécurité dans l'Est du pays, pourriez-vous au moins nous citer quelques actions concrètes?
Les actions concrètes, c'est d'abord le renforcement de nos forces armées de la République démocratique du Congo. Ce renforcement va porter sur les effectifs, leur formation, la logistique pour les doter de tous les matériels qu'il faut et qui peut leur permettre de faire face à l'ampleur, n'est-ce pas, de l'action de l'ennemi. Que ce soit du côté matériel, militaire, côté logistique en termes de mobilité. Tout cela, c'est des programmes qui sont déjà mis en marche. Et les programmes de formation, parce qu'il y a bon nombre de jeunes, des recrutements se sont poursuivis au sein de nos forces armées. Et il y a des sessions qui arrivent déjà à terme. Avec des partenaires de la paix comme la MONUSCO, nous avons institué des concertations internes avec les responsables de la MONUSCO au niveau de la représentante spéciale, tout comme au niveau des représentations dans leur bureau en province et même sur le plan opérationnel. Nous voyons là où il y a des failles sur le plan organisationnel et là où il y a des failles en termes de collaboration, en termes de coordination opérationnelle, tout cela va nous permettre de renforcer notre dispositif et de répondre de manière plus efficiente que ce que nous avons connu jusqu'à maintenant.
Les responsables des confessions religieuses de la SICKLY dénoncent la présence de plusieurs militaires qui sont toujours là au terme des brassages, qui ne veulent pas être déplacés.
Il y a eu une permutation générale ici. On a changé les autorités à tous les niveaux, à l'état-major général jusqu'au commandement dans les zones de défense.
Les évêques se trompent.
Je ne polémique pas là-dedans.
Je vous remercie.
Merci.
Voilà, c'était là notre invité, le vice-premier ministre en charge de l'Intérieur, Gilbert Kankonde. Il répondait aux questions de Jeff Ngoy. Ainsi prend fin ce journal supervisé par Julien Yamoni, coordination de Richard Junior Kamonga. Merci de nous avoir suivis.
This one's short. Relative.
Radio Kapi.
À 12h à Kinshasa, 13h à Bunia. Mesdames, Messieurs, voici les titres de votre journal. À Ituri, une nouvelle attaque des éléments Codeco fait 12 morts et 4 véhicules incendiés hier samedi dans 3 villages dans les territoires de Djougou. Ce dimanche, les combats se poursuivent encore entre ces rebelles et les FARDC, affirme la société civile locale. La population, quant à elle, plaide pour une intervention de la MONUSCO. Un éboulement de terre fait 2 morts hier samedi à Kikwit dans la province du Kwilu.
Oh, this is interesting. It says 41 seconds. Okay, now that's interesting. This one's supposed to be 13 minutes. It says 41 seconds on the flare.
Radio Kapi.
So there's a bunch of dead people. Oh. Incursion des miliciens Codeco à Lopa, 5 morts. Embuscade de Maimai à Sikindwe. Mojito récupéré par les FARDC, that's the army. Conseil urbain de la jeunesse aux manifestants, un emboulement à Kikui fait 2 morts. Formation des journalistes par l'UNICEF. Why can't you just say UNICEF? Par l'UNICEF. Conférence des jeunes leaders. Leaders, you're telling me. How do I say that in French? Grogne des infirmières de la ZS de Bandera. I'm not sure where that story is going. Yeah, that one looked interesting. This is 41 seconds. Somebody fucked up. That's too bad. Oh, it doesn't say 13 minutes. It's 13 o'clock. That's neither here nor there. It's 41 seconds and it's not supposed to be. Well, if all that shit happened that day, the day before his news is not going to happen. Damn it.
The breakfast cereal shot from gun. Present.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the Kaufman Foundation, working together with communities to break down barriers and prepare all people for success in their jobs and careers as employees or entrepreneurs. More online at kaufman.org. From the Abe and Ida Cooper Foundation, commemorating Fred Cooper by supporting programs which highlight the current issues of racism, equality, diversity, sexism, and anti-Semitism. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Noel King.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. More than 100 chief executives and corporate leaders joined a call over the weekend. They discussed their objections to state voter restrictions across this country. Republican lawmakers already passed new restrictions in Georgia, and a bunch of other states may follow. Jeffrey Sonnenfeld is a professor in management at Yale and helped to organize the call. He's on the line. Good morning.
From guns and the one shot from guns give you something important. Yes, listen to this. You want to have the kind of stamina that Sergeant Preston has. The stamina that pulled him through his rugged Yukon adventures. Both Quaker puffed wheat and Quaker puffed rice give you added food value of restored natural grain amount of vitamin B1, niacin, and iron. So for the nourishing treats that can't be...
Around midday, the first guests arrive at the Amal restaurant and the kitchen starts to hum. The menu always includes traditional Moroccan tagine. Under the watchful eye of her instructor, Fatim Zahra is learning how to perfect the slow-cooked stew.
She really wants to get on and make something of her life. At first, she was very shy. But she's slowly getting there. We're very happy with her.
The training lasts between 6 and 9 months. The requirements are stringent. The school has high standards when it comes to punctuality, hygiene, discipline, and responsibility. There's always one trainee who drops out. But those who complete the training nearly always go on to find permanent work.
I'll just leave right now.
The non-profit organization finances the training using proceeds from the restaurant. It also runs a catering service and cooking courses for the public.
Morocco was missing something like this. They've really filled a niche with this idea. The women have the opportunity to find work, and respectable work too.
It's nice to try and find opportunities to support the local culture and in this case, help women become more independent and more empowered. And we get to have a nice lunch along the way. So.
During her training, Fatim Zahra earns 100 euros a month. As far as her family is concerned, that's a lot of money. She proudly shows where she burned herself in the kitchen at work. Her mother is suitably impressed.
She's such a brave girl. She's always had lots of plans, but I could never have paid for it myself.
Every time I hurt myself, I learn something new. It'll soon heal anyway. And one day, I will have made it.
Whoa. How much are you hurting yourself at this school? What do they got you doing?
Particles of icy snow driven by a high wind. For protection, they pull the hoods of their parkas forward to shield their faces. Presently, the sergeant pointed to an opening in the western wall of the canyon.
There's the cave.
I see it.
If Miss Taylor told the truth, we'll find young Travis hiding there.
Sergeant, I see him. He's watching from behind that big rock at the mouth of the cave.
I see someone's head.
That's Travis. You crooks, keep away from here. Did he call us crooks?
Yes, steady, King. Hold it, boy.
Stop, I tell you. You see any guns coming here, I'll shoot. He's calling us killers. He must be crazy.
We can't tell who we are while we wear these parkas.
Hold your fire, Travis. He's raising his gun.
We're police!
I can King!
As the constable fell, Sergeant Preston gave King the word to charge, and then opened fire. The first shot from his pistol smashed Travis' rifle. Unarmed and helpless, the fugitive ducked behind the rock. In scant seconds, King was over the rock and on top of him.
Get away! Get off me!
Knocked to the ground by the charge of the powerful dog, found his arm gripped in jaws of steel. A moment later, Sergeant Preston closed in.
Hello, King. Down, boy. On guard. Stand up, Travis.
I don't think he's hurt me.
Not nearly as badly as you did the constable.
Constable?
The man you just shot.
Oh, no, I didn't shoot the constable.
No?
You mean to say that man out there is Jack Martin?
Yes.
He's walking toward us. I didn't kill him, thank goodness. I didn't know. Who are you?
Sergeant Preston.
You are Lawman?
There's a uniform beneath this parka.
Oh, no, I'm in deeper than ever. I didn't know you were Lawman. I swear I didn't know it.
Watch him, King. How are you, Martin?
Not bad. Bullet nicked my shoulder and knocked me down. That's about all. I think it's only a scratch.
Now handcuff this man and we'll look at your wound.
I'm sure it's Trippz.
Hold out your hands, Travis. Jack, take off that parka.
I didn't know it was you, Constable. I thought you two were killers. A likely story. It's an open and shut case, Travis. You killed Hendricks, then came here to hide. I saw Sergeant Preston and me open fire. You didn't count on Sergeant Preston smashing your rifle, or on King.
That's not true.
Why did you think we were killers?
I thought the constable was someone else.
No, you did, huh?
Hold still, Jack.
Was recycled here. It's an economic sector that appears to have a bright future in Europe.
The EU tried to change the way of recycling ships, so they wanted to prevent ships, European ships, from going to Asia, and that's why they started. They said, look, every EU flagged ship, we want it to be recycled on a place that we have a license. So today we got, I think, 26 EU yards, 3 Turkish yards, and 1 US yard that have this license.
The EU ship recycling regulation has been in place since 2019. It stipulates that all ships now sailing under a European flag can only be broken up under strictly controlled environmental and working conditions. Supervising how the regulation is carried out, however, is left up to individual member states. The laws were triggered by the appalling working conditions in Asia. 10 years ago, 1,000 people on average were being injured here every month. But the Western Marine Shipyard has taken steps to drastically reduce the number of accidents at the facility. The company now even has its own infirmary.
You need to follow the safety regulations to stay safe. Gloves, earplugs, you have to take all the required protective measures. And if you're working off the ground, you have to wear a safety.
Iran has blamed Israel for a string of attacks on its nuclear scientists, including a roadside ambush of a leading scientist outside Tehran last November. There were no reports of injuries or radiation leaks at the Natanz site. State TV carried Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif's remarks, naming Israel as the source of the attack and vowing that Iran would take its revenge. Iran has been steadily accelerating its nuclear activities since the U.S. pulled out of the deal, ramping up its enrichment of uranium. It now has a stockpile of 20% enriched uranium that greatly exceeds the amount permitted under the nuclear deal. A foreign ministry spokesman says Tehran will replace any damaged centrifuges at Natanz with more advanced models. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Istanbul.
Particular cause. So I treat the law book as one indicator of the progression of society, and this could be testimony to that.
You know, the reason why we are introducing this new draft regulation, I guess, is because the current law is not enough to cover all the scenarios concerning this age group. And now, especially in primary school or secondary schools, many children probably the sex and education received by them is not sufficient, I would say. Probably they have a very ambiguous understanding of the relationship with a different gender or a person who's way older than him or her. And because recently, I would say, or in recent years, we have seen so many tragic stories and concerning this age group and about some school romance and went viral online. So people were discussing about this issue, and we definitely
killer cause. So got a problem here southbound on Don Mills past Eglinton, a stalled vehicle in the right lane. That's now gone. And just a heads up for anyone planning to take the Gardner, great news. Everything has fully reopened through the long-term construction zone. So both ways between the DDP and York, we're back.
I think he's killing me.